This will be Appointments Committee, Ad hoc Appointments Committee for April 24, 2024. This meeting is being recorded and will be rebroadcast on the Town of Barnstable Government's Access Channel in accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20. The chair must inquire whether anyone else is recording this meeting, and if so, please make your presence known. No? Okay.
Go for the roll call. Councilors, Burdick,
Present.
Clark,
Here.
Turkelson,
Here.
Bloom,
Here.
Mendez.
Here.
You have full quorum.
Okay, Peter Cross.
Peter, would you mind sitting? Microphone, so people on Zoom have a hard time hearing this. And
Jeff Mendes.
nice to see you. Seth Burdick, nice to meet you.
Okay, so I see you're interested in both committees. Zoning and Strategic Housing Committee. I usually ask pretty boilerplate questions. As far as compromise, as far as playing well with others. Can you give us an example in your professional person, just a professional life, where you might have had to come to compromise to come to a decision?
I was a middle school teacher for 38 years.
Not saying
You go.
Do you think I ever compromised? I think I ever sat on curriculum committees, any other boards at school, had to compromise.
What school system?
I was 25 years in Woodstock, Vermont, and I was 11 years in the DY system and 1 year in the Barnstable system.
You lie, huh? We won't hold that against you.
What?
He grew up in the Boston.
I grew up in the Barnstable, right? I'm a native Cape Cod. There aren't many of us left.
Very cute.
Right down the street, about a half a mile.
What class?
1964.
So you probably knew my father, Ronnie, and
I did.
yeah, that was my dad. Okay, he was 62. Out of the two committees, which one would you favor?
I think I probably favor the housing. I see that as a dire need in not just the town of Barnstable, but on Cape Cod and in Massachusetts and pretty much countrywide.
Okay. Also, Clark.
Thank you very much. And thank you for your interest. Have you sat in on any of the housing committee meetings?
I have not.
Watched them? If regarding zoning, the ZBA, or planning board, just curious.
I have not.
Now, I know that you've served on many boards and committees before. I recognize.
I have.
What are the committees that you serve on?
I was the chairman of the committee that first took over the Barnstable water system, the Hyannis water system, when it was purchased from Connecticut Water, and that was an interesting challenge. John McLean asked me to do that. And when I finished up, I served on that board for maybe 10 years, and then John Klumer asked me again to serve as chairman of the committee that divested the town of Barnstable of the grade 5 school, maybe 15 years ago, which is now the St. John Paul School here. Previously had been Barnstable Middle School, Barnstable High School, Barnstable Junior High School, and many other things.
Oh, cool. That's a lot of responsibility. So what made you consider coming back to service again?
Well, I'm really not happy with the way things are going in terms of housing in the town of Barnstable. I see personally, and you can put this as a strike if you want, I see way too much people trying to cram way too much into the village of Hyannis. I also serve on the board of commissioners for the Hyannis Fire District, and please don't hold that against me. But I think I don't see any global thinking in terms of the town of Barnstable. I see thinking in terms of let's put it in Hyannis because Hyannis is a water system, Hyannis has sewer, Hyannis has lots of things. Hyannis is full. Where are we going to go with it? And I'm seeing the possibility of 4-story buildings on Main Street. I don't want to turn Hyannis into Chelsea or Weymouth or any other suburb of Boston. parking is a tremendous issue. And if we keep putting things in a concentrated area, it's only going to get worse. I work with many teachers that had a hard time finding housing at a reasonable cost. We hire young firefighters to work for the Hyannis Fire District, for the Hyannis Fire Department, Hyannis Fire and Rescue, and they have a difficult time finding housing, many of them living as far away as Plymouth, which doesn't lend itself to callbacks for major fires and for emergencies and overtime. I'm very aware of the fact that the opportunities for young people on the Cape, as I see them, are endless until you get to the housing market. And once you get to the housing market, you hit the wall. My wife and I were very fortunate to build our own houses when we could. We scrimped and saved, and that's really hardly possible now with the price of land on Cape Cod and the price of small houses on Cape Cod. It's very difficult for our young people to stay here, and they can earn a decent wage. But when you look at the price of housing, especially when we have a lot of our housing being bought up by off-Cape people who turn them into short-term rentals. And what that does is that destroys neighborhoods. Because I live on Highland Street, which is our whole colony, and we have 7 houses on Highland Street, and only 2 of them are occupied by year-round residents. The rest are short-term rentals. And what does that do for neighborhood? We don't have any kids in our neighborhood. We've got all old people. They're all my age or older. And that unsettles the neighborhood. That doesn't do anything for the school system. It doesn't do anything for the fabric of the community. And it bothers me.
If you're not selected for these committees, would you still be engaged in or participating in them?
Yes.
Thank you.
Also,
I think your voice is an important one. And one, someone who speaks from Hyannis. We need to have all kinds of opinions and views in these committees. And I personally like where you're coming from, myself. One thing I'm concerned about, though, is what these committees might turn into. And I think this is for everybody. These committees fail because people of differing views can't get together and come up with some kind of a decent product. It's not because leadership has failed. It's because the people in those committees have failed. And I just want everybody to know that I'm very concerned about these committees turning into polarities that can't be that people, as Chairman Mendes said, we need to compromise. We need to find common ground, and I hope everybody's prepared to do that. Are you prepared to do that, Mr. Cross?
Absolutely. The only place, as far as I'm concerned, that compromise is a dirty word is in Washington right now.
That's right.
And frankly, I'm embarrassed by the lack of compromise at the federal level. It distresses me greatly. And what you have to do is stake out your corner and then figure out how realistic it is and what are other people's opinions. And you have to value other people's opinions, and you may disagree with them completely. But compromise is not a dirty word in my book.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Jefferson.
Along the lines of where full has been hotly debated in the public comment section of our town meetings, if the town council meetings, I don't know if you've been watching any of those. In if you're envisioning that Hyannis is full, and we have our other villages, do you have anything in particular that you think that we need to consider when we're bringing housing? If we're thinking about saying that's full, but we have these other villages, any particular concerns you have with the concept of expanding outside of Hyannis? Knowing, you obviously know about water, so you have that background, so.
Water is an essential, as you know. I think it would benefit the town to do an inventory of town properties that could be used to enhance, housing. We have a Cape Cod Regional Transit Authority running buses, all over Cape Cod. And that's in my 77 years, that's a recent thing. That's been going on for maybe 25 years, but from my perspective, that's fairly recent. As a kid, we hitchhiked all over the place. Can't do that anymore. You can take buses now. I see them all over the place, and that's great. I think it would benefit the other villages to take a really hard look at what's inside the boundaries of each village and what needs to be done for the benefit of the entire town, rather than being parochial and saying, I live in West Barnstable, or I live in Barnstable, or Katuitt, or Marston's Mills, or Centerville, or Hyannis. What's the broad outlook of housing on Cape Cod, and how can the town of Barnstable facilitate this going forward, that would want to bring people to this area to work for good jobs? They're building this giant thing down here at the hospital. Where are the people going to work? Where are the people going to live that work in that hospital? I had a visit with the doctor recently at the center over on North Street. And Dr. Alfonso told me we're desperately trying to find a new orthopedic surgeon. And every time they come down, they say, oh, this is a great place to live. I'd love my wife and kids to be here on Cape Cod. And then they find a house at the minimum price of $900,000. And they say, you know what? I'm going to South Carolina where I can buy the same house for $200,000. So it's a difficult situation, but I think that from the town level, we need to be more inclusive of the entire town, rather than thinking of the various villages being separate entities, and not contributing to the entire town. Because they do. People say, I have a sister who lives in West Barnstable. Oh, I hate to go to Hyannis. The traffic's awful. Well, why do you come to Hyannis for my doctor? Say my dentist is there. That's where I go to get my car fixed, all these other things. We'll stay in West Barnstable and get it done. You can't do it. So we need to be inclusive housing wise, because we're the center of the town. There's no question about that. But the town of Barnstable needs to be inclusive and spread out housing in the town, and look at, there are many new technologies that can bring about water systems, that can bring about sewer, septic systems without being attached to the sewer line that we have here in Hyannis, which is maxed out. All you have to do is drive up Versus Way on a nice warm summer day with a southwest wind, and you know it's maxed out. How far can we push the Hyannis water system? What can we do with other water systems in the town of Barnstable? Are there well fields that could be put in other parts of the town that could benefit housing in those towns? And Title V technology has grown in leaps and bounds in terms of removing nitrogen from septic, and the new septic systems that can be put in on site without running miles and miles of pipe to get to Hyannis. So that's what I see as the town needing to do, is to support the entire town and the entire economy of this area. And it's not just Barnstable. Other towns are struggling with the same thing. And we need to be a leader. Barnstable can be a leader, and we need to be a leader and take some bold steps and say, okay, what can we do with the Marston's Mills Elementary School that's sitting out there in the corner of Route 28, 149? What can we do with that? What can the town do with that piece of land? Can we take some responsibility for that land and put it into housing? I don't think the answer, frankly, is putting another 95 houses, the housing units at the Cascade, another 120 at the old Cape Cod Bank and Trust, and more at the old Pendergast Hyannis Inn Motel on Main Street across from the Baptist Church. Where's the water gonna come from? Where's the septic gonna go? Where are the cars gonna park? Where are the people gonna work? Where are they gonna shop? Those of us that have been here for a while, remember when the First National was over on the corner of Barnstable Road and High School Road Extension. A&P was on Main Street. People could shop there. You could walk to shop. Can't do that anymore. Now you've got to go out to whatever Star Market Angelo's on West Main Street, or you got to go all the way across town to Stop and Shop and Shaw's, the other side of town. Both of which are in the Barnstable Fire District, I might add. So I don't know, there's a lot of head scratching to be done and a lot of compromise to be done and a lot of hard looking to be done at what can be done to house families of all income strata. Low income, middle income, high income. They're all valuable.
Okay, and one more question, because you've been here in the town for a period of time. Have there been any instances where we've changed zoning to fit a problem that in hindsight you can look back on and say that was maybe not such a great idea? And you know, their concerns, you know, we tried to fix a problem, but it didn't work out.
That's a tough question because zoning is such an intricate thing. I mean, if you look at the zoning map, I look at less complicated marine charts than that. When I'm on the boat. It's very difficult. Zoning has been both good and bad. I know there are people in town that I've talked with that say we should do away with zoning completely, make everything available for half-acre lots. And do away with 1 acre or 2 acre lots, wherever that might exist. I'm not so sure that the emphasis on Main Street in terms of zoning has been a good thing. I look at Main Street now versus what I knew, and I do not live in the past. I'm living in the present. I realize it's 2024, and I know how old I am, but some things have worked out better than others. And Hyannis is very difficult. It's very difficult to get merchants to run a viable business on Main Street in Hyannis. Lack of parking is the number one thing. And customers, how do you get customers in here? And if we take up all the parking with housing, how are we going to attract people that want to come here to the Cape and view the Cape in the summer, which is a major portion of tourism, is a major business on Cape Cod. There's no question about it. And we've got Highline and the tours that run out of the harbor. We've got the Steamship Authority, which brings in tons of business. If everybody that went over on the steamship left $1 in Hyannis, we'd be doing all right. They run, $2.5 million, 2.5 million people a year. So I'm not sure that the zoning has served Hyannis well.
Good, thank you.
Councilor Burdick.
I think I've heard everything I need to hear.
Well, thank you, Mr. Cross, and thank you for bringing your perspective, because like you said, there's not many of us left.
Yeah, you're right.
And you can remember a time, like I remember, when we didn't break down by villages, we broke down by town.
Yeah.
You were from Barnstable, you were a Barnstable kid. You weren't a Marston kid or an Austinville kid. That's how we grew up. So thank you for bringing your perspective, and you'll be hearing from us soon.
Thank you.
All right.
I should let you know that, are you aware that there is a meeting regarding the Marston's Mills Elementary School next week?
I did not know that.
There's one in person at Liberty Hall at 6 o'clock on the 30th, and a similar one by Zoom on May 2nd.
Yeah, thank you. Fingered my phone. Sure. No, I didn't lose.
Thanks again.
Thank you for your time.
But I will tell you, I thanked your father after I built my house. I came and I saw Joe Bloom and I said, Bill, you started. You started me.
Stay good, Michelle.
All right.
Next.
What's going on, Steve? How you doing?
Hey, how are you? Thanks so much for having me.
No problem.
Appreciate it. Councilor
Steve, Charlie, who wants to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Okay. See you all. Thank you. I have copies here, if anybody needs a copy. Resume,
Oh,
cover letter.
Senator took care of that for us.
Of course, yeah, of course. Well, thank you again for having me and, obviously for your service with the town.
All right, Steve, we know your name well.
All right, thank you.
So again, I'm being uncompromised. You're well aware of what's going on in town, right?
Yes, yes.
What the divisiveness in town.
Mhm.
Can you give us an example in your professional life of when you had compromise?
Sure, you know, I'll use the planning board. There's two that come to mind, with my time on the planning board. One was the Walgreens in Hyannis. That was a time on the board when I don't feel there was as much interest in, say, kind of the historic and maritime culture of projects. And, that's one where I kind of dug in a little bit and worked on the design a little bit more than others. And was able to get the, developer to compromise a bit on the design, using shingles as a material, which gave a little bit more of the, Hyannis maritime historic culture. So that was something I was proud to kind of hang my hat on and, was a little bit happier with the result, you know, than the initial design. So that was a good compromise. The other one was a very challenging, brutal, controversial project, which was 810 Wakeby. That was the solar array. I don't know if everybody remembers that, but that was a very challenging, brutal situation because you had, you know, homeowners who had every right to say everything that they said. And on the other side, you had the Dover Amendment, you know, 48 Section 3, that doesn't allow, you know, a town to kind of overly regulate solar. So that had to come to a compromise. There, in my opinion, you know, as a board member, there was no other option to try and find a middle ground there. And I was really happy with the middle ground that we found. When that application first came to us, it included battery storage, which I had big issue with. I just wasn't comfortable with it. And there wasn't enough information known about that and how it might affect the neighbors, the drinking water, the environment. And we were able to completely take that off the table, increase the buffers. And yeah, I was just kind of happy with the work that myself and the board did to find a compromise there. And I know that those homeowners don't consider that a win at all, and I don't blame them. But I know what it might have looked like had we not been able to do that. So those are two instances I can mention. And I recognize both of what you said. I share your concern about, you know, the possibility of failure. And the possibility of failure for these subcommittees with not trying to find common ground. Honestly, that's why I'm sitting here. I wouldn't have applied if I didn't feel that I could bring value and try and facilitate that. I facilitate that in my daily life, working for the family HVAC company and dealing with conflict there. So anyways, I definitely recognize the need for compromise. Critical.
Great.
Yeah.
Councilor Burdick.
Me first?
You first.
Okay, all right, then I'll have some questions.
Put you on the spot, yeah.
I have to listen to it here before I have, but hey, I don't mind being last, FYI. I don't
For the
know,
record.
yeah, for the record. So I don't know, I'll start very broadly then. So what do you think the opportunities are for this particular committee? And RE zoning and our use of regulatory agreements and enforcement relative to regulatory agreements or lack thereof?
Absolutely. I think that's a great question. It's a broad question. I'll try to be as quick as I can.
Keep it brief.
Specifically zoning, you know, I will say, you know, it just says zone, so it doesn't necessarily focus in on form-based code. I know form-based code is going to be a big conversation. You know, for me, I think that there's a lot of improvement that can be made to the downtown Hyannis zoning. To give an example, our board had to go to the building commissioner to get a zoning clarification on a parking issue with a special permit for downtown Hyannis. So my initial reaction to that was, well, why is that detail not in there? Why can't we have that level of detail in there that we need to go to the building commissioner? So absolutely room for improvement in terms of the zoning, room for compromise in terms of the zoning. There's a lot of things that can be looked at and should be looked at. Parking, height, density, setbacks. I think that there's room for adjustment there and room for compromise. I've heard a lot of passionate public comment at our board as well as town council. And there's a lot there that could be implemented into some sort of a give and take with the zoning. Regulatory agreements, that's a love-hate relationship that I have with those. They are brutal. And the reason they're brutal is just because they've got to get through two boards. They've got to get through town council as well as planning. You could have a planning board that works something out that just does not fit with what the makeup of town council is looking for. So I think that I'm so happy that we're looking at regulatory agreements, whether I'm on this subcommittee or not. I'm thrilled to hear that, and I will be involved no matter what. I'd like to see some sort of informal initial meeting with a developer between planning and town council, just to give the developer a sense of where those two boards stand. Because if you look at the amount of time, effort, money that a developer might spend through the whole process, get through planning, and then maybe get it shut down at the last minute at town council, it's just, you can see how a developer might be frustrated and discouraged by that. Regulatory agreements really should be very, very rare, and they become more rare now that the zoning has changed. I would hate to see it go away completely because there's a lot of success stories around town. But I think that it does serve its purpose, but I do think it needs a good look and it needs an adjustment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm curious about Roby's. I know that that's not that's not, but as just a character question, just for my entertainment.
Sure.
So you're the president currently? And
Yes,
it's a
sir.
family business started by your
Grandfather. Yeah.
grandfather.
Yeah, thank you for asking about that. 1959, he started it. My father, ran it for, many years, and, my father stepped back a couple of years ago, and I've been running it ever since. We have 58 employees, about 40 trucks, and, definitely part of the local community.
Right, where's the shop for
We're in Hyannis, right next to, the big construction at, Willow Street in 28.
Right,
So it's a challenging
yeah, it must be
site.
fun to get to that right now.
It's a challenging site, but there's so much that I've learned in this role that I know applies to my work with the town and would apply to this subcommittee. So
Right, now how long have you been the chair of the planning board?
2 years. 2 years. I joined in 2019, and I believe I've been chair now for 2 years, coming up on 2 years.
Oh, yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Can I go after Charlie, because I'm still formulating my question, the question in my head, or after somebody else?
I've seen Roby's trucks forever.
I love to hear
You
that.
know, and I always wondered how they got their name, and now I know.
There you go. There you
I
go.
didn't realize that.
Yeah, and my grandfather worked with Rusty, Rusty.
Sure.
And their vans were always just yellow.
Yeah.
So when my grandfather split off, he bought a couple of Rusty's old vans. He said, I gotta make these look different, so he painted half of it red.
Yeah.
And that's where the
Yeah.
red and yellow came from, so, yeah.
Well, I'm glad you answered that question that I had about my concern about where these committees are going, because I see it, if people are gonna dig their heels in or representing, they're representing their own beliefs, that, everybody has a right to represent their belief. Everybody has a right to express their opinions about things. But if we're going to dig our heels in so much that we can't come up with a report after everything is said and done, it's a failure.
Yeah.
I just would like to see these ad hoc committees provide some valuable information for the town, so that we can go forward in these areas and, maybe clean things up a little bit, like you said, there are some things in zoning that could use a little tweaking.
Right.
As it's the case in housing too, so.
Yeah, well said, and I echo that completely. And, you have to be professional, you have to be respectful, you have to listen. And, to step into one of these committees with a line drawn in the sand in your mind really is a disservice to the town and to the town council. You created these subcommittees for a reason, and I think it's your duty, and I know you will, to find individuals who are going to facilitate compromise and build trust and mediate. So,
And I sort of agree with you, or, you know, or maybe the intention of what you were saying about, hey, we've been given this thing zoning, you know, okay, that covers an awful lot.
yeah,
And, you know, will this committee be able to, you know, cover all that territory, you know?
well, and
And,
just to piggyback on that, I'm hopeful that town council, once these committees are formed, gives some good instruction. This is what we want, you know, because it is vague, you know what I mean? And, you wouldn't want to have the subcommittee not have that guidance. Where are we starting? What are we really looking at? You know, how is the process to go? That's up to you, you know, so hopefully that comes out of town council so that, and also, these committees don't have a lot of time. So we need to hit the ground running, the committee needs to hit the ground running.
thank you.
Counselor Clark?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time and for your interest in serving.
Thank you.
With all your commitment with planning board, especially as chair, that's a heavy lift to be meeting that, at that interval with planning board and the new committee. So, it looks like you're ready to roll up your sleeves and do some work.
Completely, yeah, and I mean, thank you for recognizing that. Obviously, life is busy, but I wouldn't have come here before you if I didn't feel that I could handle it. I'm finally at a point where I'm kind of comfortable with planning board. It took a long time to get to that point. So I feel like, you know, I definitely could handle this. And, you know, to piggyback on that, I know what it takes to get prepared. Meaning I know how much work it took outside of planning board to become informed, to be able to talk about things intelligently. So I know it's gonna take time and work outside of the committee sessions.
It shows with the way you run the planning board.
I appreciate that. Thank you for that.
Very respectful and moving it along. And I do remember I had attended some of the meetings with the 810 Wakeby.
No.
I understand how you,
That was a tough
a
one.
lot of machinations about that.
Yes,
If you don't, if you aren't selected to be on this committee, would you be attending those meetings?
you'll see me, no question. Yeah,
Because
yeah,
I think it's under recognized that when these meetings are open to the public, that the public have, people who don't have to be at a meeting and come anyways, show commitment and passion. And I think that, if someone's not actually selected for a committee, that their value is still, there's still an opportunity for them to provide value. And I should say,
Absolutely.
I'm not so sure that, the council's gonna direct the committees. I know you had mentioned that you're looking for direction. I think that the idea is to kind of do a little free range, exploratory work and see what you come up with in a creative way. That's my perspective anyways.
and that, you know, would be successful as long as the makeup of the subcommittee is good, you know what I mean? If there's good people, then I think that they would find proper direction and hopefully focus in the areas that the counselors are looking for.
Well, there'll be 5 counselors on the committee as well.
That's right.
So that shows.
Good point.
the
Yeah.
Investment of, at the elected officials.
As far as the comment about, hoping that maybe the town council input in zoning, you know, when we're having a developer think about setting up a project,
Yeah,
that there's kind of
Right.
not
Yeah.
there's not a pre-conversation before they're bringing something forward. I'm just curious, historically, if a developer has brought forward a project and that wasn't accepted, in your experience and estimation, I'm really struggling to say what I want to say about this. That breakdown at the town council level later on,
yes.
why do you see that happened?
Well,
Like, where is
Yeah.
the breakdown in that maybe could be solved? It sounds like leadership is working to do that with actually making concepts and philosophies more stated in writing
Agreed.
versus it's kind of in the ether somewhere and, we don't really know where that is.
Right.
Is that, I'm just curious how you think that has gone wrong and maybe could be better served going forward.
Yeah, I mean, again, it ultimately can just come down to difference of opinions on the individual level. I will say it's very, very rare, and I think many of you know this, when something comes out of planning board and then isn't adopted or passed by town council. It's very, very rare. I think I've only seen one, and I can't even remember which one it was particularly. But again, I think it just comes down to on an individual level, that the planning board members might not have seen things the same way as town council might have seen them. But a lot of what is going to be done by this committee, this subcommittee, I think will overcome a lot of that. I still feel that there might be value, or you know what? Let me bring a little bit more context into this. Say town council put an agenda item on to talk about some of their goals for regulatory agreements, because remember, with a regulatory agreement, we are basically negotiating a set of waivers for some sort of donation or gift to the public good. So when I first started, I remember saying, can I have some examples of that? What does that look like? Is that a park? Is that a cash donation? Is that donating a property? What is that? So if town council actually put out, these are our goals for public benefit for regulatory agreements. Now our board has something to work with, and our board has gone through times where there really wasn't a lot of interest in trying to negotiate hard for that public good. I know where town council sits now, and I know where planning board sits now. If we had a regulatory agreement in front of us, we would let it be known right up front that this is a big list of waivers, and we're going to be looking for something commensurate in return for that. So knowing the goals of the council would empower us to know what to ask for. I hope that.
No,
kind
no,
of-
I think you
That's
answered
great.
my question.
Yeah.
It was probably just my inability to say it in a manner
No,
that
that-
my brain was having trouble processing.
I thought that was great. That was great. And it's something that I thought of a lot. So I would find myself kind of pushing for things and then, other members just kind of brushing off. So
Well, I mean,
I'm
it's.
just one vote.
Yeah, it seems like in the end run, there's this group of people that have to say yes to something. But it's also like you don't want to show up on the day, never ever having a conversation between those people. And I do think it's sometimes challenging with getting all of us in the room, getting it on the agenda, like, is there a way, and maybe this committee will have some ideas on how we could work more in concert so that we're not wasting developers' time, but
Yes.
we're also not upsetting the public, that we're not being responsive to what they need. I mean, there's a lot of people at stake in the room that feel their needs are important. So I think it's a very complicated negotiation at the end run that sometimes looks ugly at the end. maybe.
No question. You absolutely nailed it. And it could be as simple as an informal public hearing with some sort of a mixed planning and town council, just to say, tell us what you're thinking. Let's see some renderings. Let's see a general sense of what you're thinking. Let's let the public weigh in, just so that a developer gets a feel of the room before they spend the amount of money they spend on plans and engineers. Let's get a sense of what is the current stance on, a potential idea before they go too far.
Well, even just beyond the money, I think it's the frustration that the public also feels when, nothing's getting moved forward, or the project is stalled, or it's feeling pushed off. So it's above and beyond the money, it's the negative feelings that could be generated by people feeling like something isn't moving forward. It'd be better if we could work collaboratively and have things move forward for the best of the town as a whole.
Yeah.
And I think that would be beneficial.
Yeah, 100%.
Just want to interject for a second.
Yeah.
The big problem with developers in the town was ambiguity.
Hmm.
That's why form-based code was redone. Is because we were actually losing developers. And it's our charge as counselors to have a balance. Not only take care of the citizens, but also give developers who want to invest money in our community the peace of mind that they're not going to spend $250,000 on plans just to get passed by planning and then come to the town council and then half the council's going to say no. That was part of the reason why form-based code was enacted.
Yeah.
It's not perfect. It's never going to be perfect. But it's up to us to see people on these committees who are willing to compromise and make it a better document. Not perfect, because nobody's gonna, not everybody's gonna be happy.
Yeah.
But we all have to be able to take a little something out of it and say, okay, at least it's better than what it was.
Yeah, well said, and, there's room for improvement, there's definitely room for improvement and room for more input. And, to your point, one of the things that I know applicants to, the planning department have said since form-based code went into, effect is that they're at least grateful that there's a clear roadmap in front of them. What those actual, parameters are, I think should be looked at again and tweaked. But they do appreciate the fact that it's a pretty clear roadmap. And that was the same thing with the design guidelines that we're working on. Right now, planning board we've adopted we're trying to get the unified design guidelines, and I know, the historic commission is working hard on it as well. And they're hopefully gonna come to us with some adjustments.
Yeah, and,
So-
and, you know, especially with an old community like we have, it's always a tough thing to balance the new and efficient against the old and classic, which we all yearn to preserve.
Yeah.
It's a hard balance,
It is.
and it's never going to be perfect. And anybody who thinks it's gonna be, shouldn't be sitting on these committees. That's why it's so important for us to be able to come to compromise.
Right.
That's why it's important for us to be able to look past what we may personally want, desire and want, and look for what's best for the town and the current state that the town is. You know, believe me, like I said, I would love to go back to the days when I see Mr. Presby at the stadium every weekend. Before Kennedy had the sides on,
Oh, yeah.
but those days have never happened.
Right.
Best I said, stadium. But
Same.
those days have never happened. So it's up to us to put people on these committees who are being able to look beyond what they want or what they want to try to turn it into and look kind of nuanced and what we can all come to an agreement with to make it better. Because we're never going to change everything. We're just trying to make it better.
No, well said, well said. And I mean, I look at zoning as a living document. It should never just be done and put on a shelf.
Yeah.
Things are constantly changing and it should constantly be looked at, and I commend you and town council for, making this subcommittee to look at it.
If you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I just want to say another thing. I know that a lot of work went into into the form-based code. People spent a lot of time, a lot of valuable time doing it. And I just want to say that in my experience, sometimes life brings changes to things, and all that work, that good work that you did comes to absolutely nothing. I mean, back in 1977, 78, I was doing prison reform down here in the Cape for Barnstable County citizens.
Okay.
And we were charged with coming up with a program that would avoid recidivism, and we would go into the jails all around the state, but particularly here. And Sheriff Bowes didn't like us. We spent a whole year designing a program that we knew was not going to be passed, because the sheriff, it was a federal thing. The sheriff just didn't want to have anything to do with it. So sometimes, you work on things and, things don't work out, and it's like,
Yeah.
And I think what we're talking about tweaking, we're not trying to get rid of anything, I'm not trying to get rid of anything.
Sure.
We're just trying to tweak it so that it works better.
Room for improvement.
And I know that people worked hard, but I don't think that's an excuse to stay with something that isn't, that can be easily tweaked.
Sure. Well said. I agree.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Anybody else have anything else?
Got me.
All right, Steve.
Okay.
Good seeing
Thank you all so much.
All right.
Councilor Mendez, Councilor Clark, thank you. Councilor Bloom.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you. Nice to meet you all.
But it feels like, did you feel like you were on the spotlight?
A little bit. I like the spotlight. That's great. Have a great day. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Yeah.
No, no, it's just that was gonna be,
Extremely.
Now we gotta put the light bulb over there.
I mean, look at the light from the top. You know, if the sun's way up there.
Welcome, Mr. President.
Thank you.
I'm personally, I'm well aware of everything you've done in town, the things you've worked on. So this is more for my fellow councilors.
I can tell you some things I haven't done.
Yeah. That's okay, time.
When you retired, you remember the.
Yeah, limited time, yeah. Compromise. I know you've had to do it several
You know, the
times.
funny thing about that question, and I love the question, but it's really a personality question.
Mhm.
You know, I'm gonna first talk about that from the standpoint of being a boss.
Mhm.
And I had about 125 people working for me, and about six of them were senior managers. And so they would be doing their jobs. And I would come in and talk about something that I disagreed with them about. But I always thought they probably knew more about their jobs than I did.
Mhm.
And so I always liked it when they won the discussion. I mean, I felt very satisfied because I felt like a good boss. So part of this is accepting the fact that some people have better opinions than you have about things. So I could name some things that I have opinions about. When I talk to people sometimes, you know, I think, wow, you know, they're right. You know, my ideas weren't quite right. And when you do that, you enhance your relationship with that person and you can work with them more effectively. And that's who I am. You know, I watched Speaker Johnson speaking the other day. Now, I don't agree with Speaker Johnson about much in terms of, I'm not conservative the way he is. And he talked about how things had changed for him. He just had to get Congress, you know, the House working together. And he was very convincing that he was going to do that. And he did it. He passed that law. And I thought, you know, something, it isn't about conservatism and liberalism. It's about decent, intelligent human beings who care about this country, leading the country. That's what I care, and that's what I care about. So when I work, and I'll be honest about this, I'm not a technician about the town government. I'm really not. I worked hard exclusively to get as many people in housing as possible. I didn't work to change the system. I just wanted to get as many people as possible. If I told you how many my board told me there were, you wouldn't believe it, so I'm not going to give you the number. But, you know, that was my job. So at this point in retirement, I'm on 6 boards and trying to save some organizations and so trying to help organizations move forward and all that kind of thing. But I still have the same feeling about people needing a decent place to live. And the fact is, if you are one of 4 categories, that is sometimes elderly, sometimes low-paid workers, sometimes single mothers, and sometimes people with disabilities. If you're in those categories, you can get healthcare, you can get food, but you can't get housing. And so I've lived in a time when housing was really not seen as a government role, to a time when I personally believe that it's our obligation to do something to make sure everybody in our society has a decent place to live. Now, does that carry over to workers? The hospital is a good example. Of course it does. But what is the priority? Is the priority safe and decent housing so people can raise kids, so people can have a healthy life? I think that's the priority myself. But I worked with some employers and I wasn't there long enough to say, I had a project I was working on with Cape Fear, as a matter of fact, that the agency didn't follow through on after I left. But, you know, it's a critical thing. I'm going to make too long an answer. I hope you don't mind. You know, 40B was passed in 1969. I came to the Cape, it'll be 50 years this July. And towns could have looked at 40B in 2 different ways. One, they could say the state is taking control of our zoning and I don't like it. And that's what most of the small towns did. Or you can say the state is giving me the ability to use land in a way that's needed by the community. And we can make those decisions now as a result of it. And unfortunately,
we took the point of view that the state was telling us what to do, and we resisted it. And you know, I've built housing and affordable housing in every town in Cape Cod except Provincetown and both islands. And what I found the hard way was that if you created something that it was really needed in that community at a reasonable size, that people didn't really strenuously object to. I had one project once that was the wrong project in the wrong place, and we fought a big battle. I won the battle. The lawyer for the other side, when they walked out of the courtroom, said to me, "I'll help you for free." And I thought about it, and I never built it because I was wrong. You know, and that taught me a big lesson. You know, sometimes you have to learn lessons the hard way. And I learned that you need to do something appropriate. And Marston Village property is a good example of that, but that'll be in the future. And so I'm a person that really is looking out for all the elements. I mean, the environment that the guy who was sitting here 2 weeks ago, the water and the sewer stuff is a critical issue on Cape Cod. We can't just build thousands of units of housing without fixing those problems first. And you remember, and some of you remember, in the 60s, there was a lot of public wastewater money. And we didn't do it because we thought it would cause growth. I remember the TC Pepsi, Cape Cod Planning and Development Commission telling me that. They didn't do it because it would cause growth. So what happened? The ocean's what's causing growth. It's going to grow either way. We have to be really smart about the future. And, you know, I'm a guy who's older. Why would I worry about the future? Who cares? I won't be here. But there's just something inside of some people that worry about what's happening with others, what's happening in the future. And that's me. And why would I want to do this otherwise? And I mean, I'm on 6 boards. I'm going to have to quit a couple of them. It'll be a pain in the neck. There's a lot of stuff that they were talking about here that I know very little about, to be perfectly honest with you. And, you know, I'm not going to claim to be a town expert. What I think is that the town needs to let developers know what they want and what the town will make it easy for them to do. That's important. The town needs to know and agree on what it wants, and then it needs to make it possible for developers to do that. Developers are doing it for the money. I mean, that's why the Twin Brooks guy wanted to do 310 units. Of course, it was the second biggest company in the United States. They had 60,000 closings last year. I can't even imagine it. And so do you want them to come here and build something just to make the money? No. You want them to provide housing that we need here. And some of that housing is people who are coming down to work at Cape Cod Hospital. You know, some of it would have been, maybe a lot of it, vacationers that would rent a unit with 2 or 3 others and they'd share it. And some of it, a few, not enough, were people who really needed it economically speaking. But so I was a member of that organization that opposed that project. But what few people know is that one condition I made of joining that group was that we were going to develop housing on that property that was needed in the community. And they agreed to it. Now, it wouldn't have been 310 units. And so we had a plan. We didn't announce it because, well, as time went on, we figured we had a long battle ahead, so we wouldn't. But so anyway, that's a long answer to your question. I'm sorry.
No problem. Councilor Burdick.
Me again first. All right, fine. You insist.
Well, you yelled at me.
I did not. I wanted to believe you last. I'm just trying to be funny. But, so I guess I'll start again broadly, very broadly. So in terms of housing development here in the town of Barnstable in the current situation, and in light of the fact that we have a housing authority here, what would you think, what approach would be appropriate, in your opinion, with your long experience, to get our hands around this at this point?
Well, interestingly enough, if you look at the history of the Barnstable Housing Authority, the Barnstable Housing Authority built a lot of housing back in the 60s when there was federal money. And there really isn't any federal money now. You know, there's tax credits, like that, but that's not the same thing. And so under Lenny Jones, who was the director at the time, I bet nobody remembers him, but he was a gnome-looking guy who was very talented and did a really good job. Built most of the projects that Barnstable Housing Authority has, all but I think one, were done by Lenny Jones. So I'm not sure the Housing Authority is the place to think about it right now.
That's what I mean, because how will we, you know, what is our end of it, since the housing authority is kind of out? As a municipal body in housing production, like if it were to take a municipal form.
Well, First of all, somebody mentioned the town needs to identify land that that's what's appropriate. Well, of course, that's been done at least several times, been involved in doing it. It doesn't really produce that much. I think that there's some state land that might be worthwhile, but of course, we'd have to agree on what it is. Some state land near Exit 6 that's always been there, there's a possibility. At one time, as you know, the industrial park housing was not allowed. Now look at it. Just because of the desperate need here. I mean, and I don't think it's pretty and attractive. I don't love it, but it provides useful housing for people there. What are you gonna do? You're gonna put it somewhere. And so I think that we do want to preserve, we do want to worry about water and sewer, obviously. I'm just saying is because it's critically important. But we also have to realize that the housing should be stuff that the general public will allow, and the capital design and the capital scale of it. Now, is the Cape Cod Bank and Trust project a good project, 120 units with no parking and so forth and so on? And so those questions really have to be answered. It's a pretty darn important answer. I mean, everybody likes 120 units there, more housing for people, sure, but do you like it taking up that whole lot and no parking, and people will be parking in the street? And I don't know. And how is it, what's the analysis? Let's be honest about the water supply. We're buying water from other villages besides Hyannis now. We don't provide enough water in Hyannis for Hyannis already. I also think that I was shocked the other night. I'm gonna make sure I answer your question. I was shocked the other night. I went to the planning session in Marston's Mills for the comprehensive plan that we're doing, and they're going to all the villages, and they had 4 sheets of paper. One's housing, the others are land use and so forth. And they had maybe 12 things on each one. People would have put dots of the things they liked and things they didn't like. The thing they liked least and the thing they were most opposed to was 40B. And I felt sick to my stomach actually, because I realized it's partly because people have heard so many bad things about 40B and they assume it's all people on welfare and they're taking advantage of the system and they should be working. Well, I know all those people. I mean, I visited hundreds of them in their homes, and there are people who want the same things that we want. You know, there are a few bad actors, of course, you know, in any business, in any helping system, there are bad, there are people that take advantage of it. That's the question. But so we have to get an agreement. One thing that Joe Biden doesn't do very well is sell things. And we need as a town to sell we need to agree on what we want to do, and we need to sell it to the public. It's democracy. We need to make the public understand why some of their money and some of their town space is going for these purposes, because in the long run, it's going to make it a better place, more healthy economically and more healthy in terms of people's lives. That needs to be done. You know, there's a lot of, I hate to use the word, there's a lot of ignorance out there about what's really going on. People dealing with their own stuff. They're not dealing with this kind of stuff. And, you know, we live in a society where marketing is everything. And it's abused a lot of the time, but in the public, you know, and the president is a good example of this. And it's not that I dislike him so much. I think he's a terrible president. He's a terrible marketer. He's terrible. And that's costing him tremendously. And his opponent is a good marketer. And so that's the difference. One of them, you know, so I think that, so who would be in charge of it here if it isn't the housing committee? I was on the housing committee here for a while, for several years, but I never thought the town council listened to anything the housing committee said. So I didn't want to spend my time doing it. So one of the issues is we have somewhat of a divided town council right now, kind of politically divided, and that's a sad kind of thing, but we need to bring them together. And this has been talked about, the compromise question is what this is about. We need to get them to agree that we're in big trouble. And we have to agree on a solution, and nobody's going to be entirely happy, just like the Speaker of the House did with the 2 parties. It's amazing he pulled that off, and he may lose the job over it. You know, why would he care? This is more important. And so we need to do, I think, the same thing with the council. And this wouldn't be me, but to bring the council together and agree on what the direction we need to go. And maybe the recommendations of the housing committee in September will help to do that. But I think everybody here has to be part of that, and we have to agree on it. And, you know, I know some of the council members who aren't really on my side of things, and I've known them for a long time, and they've had kids that played sports and like kids and all that kind of stuff. And I think they come around almost every time you get into an individual discussion with a reasonably well-informed, intelligent person, you can come up with a compromise. And I mean, I don't know how many times I've said to people, you know, if you and I were running a government, we could compromise on this issue, even though we completely disagree. Because you know, compromise is the only way to get anything done. You do it at home all the time. You know, I mean, of course. And so my answer is you still can't get around the fact that the council is the ultimate authority. And do we want to make a big change at the housing authority? I don't think so. I mean, they're handling the management of lots of property. And do we need to do some research on whether or not the housing authority should be the main developer that we want to deal with? Or should we use my old agency as a developer, or should we use local developers with consultants? You know, some of the good local developers we have on the Cape and in the town of Barnstable that have done some, you know, they've done stuff for us, and they do a good job. So I think you need to go to the best sources, and I don't think the housing authority have to make some changes to get there. Now, there's some good people on the board of the housing authority. I had two former staff people around the board who are both very good, but are they experts in development? No. Not at all, but would they be helpful in this respect? Yes. So, I mean, I'm saying, I don't know what the answer is, but I know the council has to agree and has to market whatever they agree on.
Very good.
Councilor Jefferson.
I'm gonna sound like Seth. It's, I mean, you've given some really great information, and obviously you have been in this arena for a very long time. I think what I appreciate most is the balanced nature of what you're explaining to us here. And it makes me hopeful that with some balanced thoughts and some balanced input, maybe this council can be a little more balanced and a little less volatile, so that we can, again, do what needs doing, because the constituents are coming to us time and time again saying we need housing. And I think we all hear that. So I think we're all invested in that. And I just appreciate, I feel hopeful listening to you, so I appreciate that.
Well, I'm not campaigning for this job, and I don't mean it to sound that way. You know, you sit there in the chair and you listen, and you say, do I really want to take this on? I don't know, you know, because it's a lot of work, and I mean, I'm doing other things that I'm not sure I'll be successful at, so you have to take some, you know. But I'm not so sure that I wouldn't really enjoy developing relationships with all the town councils on this issue, you know, and be able to talk to them in a reasonable, compromising way. And I don't know every last one of them, but I know pretty much everybody to some degree. And if somebody said, you gotta talk to all the councilors about housing and get them to take some sort of a neutral position, realizing we have to do something. Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. I don't know if that's.
Part of the deal.
Yeah, well, I don't want to say that. I read his book. Yeah. No, I don't want to say that.
I wasn't referring to the book.
When I read the book, I didn't like it. I'm sorry if I did.
Love the art of
Yeah, not that kind of deal. A deal where everybody thinks, you know, feels good about the outcome, even though it wasn't what they thought they wanted in the first place.
I get that sense from what you said, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Councilor Bloom.
Well, I know Rick's work speaks for itself, and I think I'm going to pull a set. Good. And say that.
Oh, go ahead, Charlie. Come on, ask me something. No, we met a little bit before. Charlie ran and liked each other right away. And,
Yeah.
But you won by what, 2 votes in the end?
2 votes, yeah.
2, yeah.
2 votes.
For the public now.
Councilor Pat.
Thank you. And thank you for your interest in serving on this committee. I know that you said you heard on 6 boards. Your investment of your time and talent in our community is so commendable for all these years. And it comes from a good place. If you're not chosen for this committee, would you be sitting on it and
You know, I heard that question earlier. If I can't have any significant effect, I don't want to do it.
and you could by participating in the discussion?
Well, if I was invited to come, of course I'll come. Of course I'll come. But you know, there's a lot of kind of difficult and impossible problems to solve here. And, you know, in retirement, I spent the first few years figuring out who I was. You know, you have the young years when you're going to school, and you have family years when you're worried about work and family, and then you have your retirement years where you say, who am I? What am I gonna do with what I have left? And so I decided to try to make a difference in the area that I knew something about. And, you know, it's pecking away, but if I have some ability to gather the information from a group of people and work in my mind to figure out solutions to things that could be done with those compromises. I mean, I love compromise, so I mean, I'm not just saying that because you brought this up, it's just that that's who I am. Not that I don't have strong feelings about people's need for housing, I have strongest feelings than anybody has about housing. But I understand that it's difficult to get there in our society where things have gotten so expensive, so ridiculously expensive. It's even harder to get there. And on Cape Cod, we have limited land, you have an environmental issue. We've got a super problem, and people talk about having nationwide. It isn't all the same nationwide. There are problems other places, but there are a lot of problems that housing is a lot cheaper than here, and where there are high-paying jobs. There's a lot of people who are working hard in anything with low-paying jobs here. And that's not gonna change, I don't think, so we have to deal with that, that's a reality. And,
With your familiarity with these other groups, how do you see drawing on the strengths from different groups? There's the Affordable Housing Trust that we have.
Yeah.
Housing assistance that you started.
Yeah.
And I know you serve on homeless, not hopeless.
Yeah.
Board. So how do you envision drawing on the strengths of those committees, among others, that do similar but related work?
I think it's different because when I said earlier that I worked on getting people housing, it's different than working on changing the system. And we have need some system changes here. So that I'm talking about changing the system. And I don't mean a dramatic change, but for one thing, creating the public being supportive of what we're trying to do and having a compromise that's realistic in terms of what we do and actually then implementing it rather than spending years talking about it. And, you know, we haven't done it, you know, in our society. I went to a high school that was built in 1794. It's still there. They're still sending kids to college. Here you build a school for 60 years and you build a new one because the taxpayer didn't want to spend enough and didn't want to maintain it. And the taxpayers like to get things that do good right now. And then we have to change that a little bit. There's some long-term stuff we need to do. We need to convince the public of that long-term stuff, at least the people who really believe in the future is important, even though they're not going to be alive for it. And people always say, you know, well, you know, you're doing it for your kids. I don't think of it that way. My kids are going to take care of themselves. They're going to be all right. I want to make the change because I grew up with an ideal of what America was. You know, I remember at a very early age having that idealism, and I want to move towards that. And right now is a frightening time. And so, you know, you can only change things that you're within 10 feet of. You know, I can't change what's going on in Washington. You know, I can't really do that. And so I want to reach out and make the changes I can, do the best I can with the knowledge that I have and the gifts that I've been given. And so did that answer the question? You can ask it again. Maybe I didn't answer it all.
Appreciate the
Yeah.
perspective. Thank you.
All right, Mr. President, like always.
Is that it?
That's it.
You know what I mean?
And just, I happen to agree with you. It's the urgency of now,
That's not to hear. Not to hear.
you know, and I know a lot of people say we have a housing crisis, but they don't really know how bad the housing crisis is.
Well, it just needs to be enough for you to know you have to do something about it. You're not gonna solve the problem overnight. There's nothing we can do to solve it overnight.
Baby steps.
We can try to, you know, you didn't ask the question, I'm sorry, I'm gonna use it, but at HAC, we had a program where we gave people money.
Mhm.
And I don't know how many times I said to the staff, never tell anybody we don't have any money to help them. Never tell them that. It doesn't matter. The reality is we'll raise the money. Because a lot of people in those days, you know, $500, now it's probably 1,000, made a big difference. And so we have to make a big difference as soon as possible for people who are in crisis. But in the long run, we need to be able to say 30 years from now, we're going to say we made some progress.
Thanks, Peter.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Okay, you mind if I stick around?
No, it's public forum.
Mr. Dewey.
All right, Jake, you're up.
Let me know if I chop up. I may have to turn my video off. Sometimes I have a little issues with Zoom here and video on. So just let me know and I'll go to just audio.
Nah, well, I'm gonna try to make this quick because I know you have a meeting to get to. Tell us a little bit about compromise in your professional life.
I think it's really yeah, we see that all the time, you know, listening to everyone. And
You might want to cut your video off. You are breaking up.
yeah, it always does that. So you know, saying the ZBA, you know, it's really listening, giving everyone to listen and keeping an open mind as you go into things. You know, these meetings, when I'm prepared for it, I've sort of come to my opinion, but I'm very open and very often board members, you know, any information we can gather can change your mind and you find a compromise that meets everyone's needs. I mean, I think in my landlord life, I end up a lot of compromise with tenants in difficult situations, whether it's in the backyard or we find ourselves in court. You know, it's making a compromise in that situation always. If you can't compromise, nothing good comes out of it usually.
All right, Councilor Clark.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for your interest in serving on this committee, Jake. If you were not selected for this committee, would you still be attending the meetings or engaged to help shape the discussion?
I think for sure I might not be as actively engaged if I'm not on the committee, in terms of I may be following meetings after the fact. As Mr. Presby said, you know, if I was asked to come in as you know, someone living and breathing housing every day as an expert sort of to testify or whatever, happy to do that, sure. But I will definitely do my best to be engaged with it as much as I can if I'm not selected to be on the committee.
Thank you. What did your citizen planner training teach you that might help with the issues committee?
I think a big part of, I mean, most of it was very specific to zoning, to learning different parts and pieces of zoning. But, you know, reading MGL law, I think was something that came out of that was, you know, to understand zoning laws and just really anything written by the state or even our local town code. I think it really takes you through that. It also, you know, it helps on the zoning perspective. You attended a lot of our meetings, you know, it highlights what the power we have and where the limitations are, and sort of keeps everyone in line of what you can and can't do. Because, you know, as a zoning board, we can't just make things happen or just straight stop things. You know, there's protocols that have to be followed. So I think it sort of taught that discipline of how to navigate the different bylaws and how we can work around them.
Thank you. I do know you run a good meeting and you are good at drawing your members' attention to the code and realize that you're not, although you're the ZBA, you're not making the regulations, but basically going back to what is on the books and following that. So I appreciate your perspective and your faithfulness to running the meetings that way. And as I asked Mr. Robichaud, that you meet twice a month and this would be another meeting. I know that's a heavy lift with the work you do. I take it that you're willing to make that commitment.
For sure. And timeline that President Penn put on this, I would expect we'd be meeting at least twice a month, but I don't know. That will be, I guess, determined at a later point. But yes, I would be committed, and I hope we can do many of those meetings in person as well. 'cause I think it's more effective in person for discussion along these lines.
Thank you.
Councilor Bloom.
Hey, Jake, Charlie Bloom here.
Hi, Charlie.
We haven't formally met, but, were you here earlier? I didn't know if you were signed on when I spoke about my concerns about where the committees will be going.
I got in about 5 minutes after you guys started, so I may have missed, but sort of fill me in what you're asking or what your question is.
Okay, I'll let you know what I feel. I'm concerned about where these committees are going and in going with Chairman, our chairman's concern about compromise. The big picture is these committees have to be productive. In my mind, we can't be digging our heels in with our own particular view of things. Because we want to have balanced meetings, we want to have representatives from all sides. You know, old, young, homeless, houseless, housing insecure, developers who will be building our buildings, citizens who are concerned about the size and shape of our buildings, the way they look, and if they're out of place. So I'm really concerned that if these committees, if everybody can't get along, that these committees will, and everybody digs in their heels, these committees will fail. Will fail to come up with a product that we're supposed to provide to the town council as a whole. And I don't want to see these committees fail, because it will not be a failure of leadership. It'll be a failure of the people in these committees to compromise, and that's my biggest concern. And I want to see everybody working together, and maybe we can set an example for the town council as a whole, if we're successful at that.
For sure. I think in response to that, I would say, I don't think I come into this with a really strong opinion. I think I come more with data and experience and just day-to-day living and breathing what's going on the streets. Just in terms of number of phone calls I'm getting of people that are looking for housing, what type of housing they're looking for. And then on sort of the development side, what is holding things back for different people trying to do things. I think one thing maybe I do have a little opinion on is sort of the size and scale of things that Cape Cod is meant to have for denser housing. But again, I go into that with an open mind. I see that there is a side that people really feel we need these high density, large buildings. But I also know when people are calling me, what they're looking for and how they want to live when they move to Cape Cod, or when they're moving out of their parents or someone's basement, et cetera, et cetera. Do they want to move into the large big box apartment buildings? I think I can just bring a lot of data to the group, and be able to respond to different people's ideas. So I think that I agree with you. This committee needs to work quickly and needs to come up with some strong, solid ideas. And we need to hear the reason those ideas aren't liked by some members of the community and why they are liked by other members of the community. So I feel confident that I wouldn't get caught in the weeds of a political back and forth myself, but I hope the committee is made up of a good group that can carry us forward.
Thank you.
Councilor Jefferson.
Hi, Jake.
Hi, Councilor Turkelson.
I know that in the past you served on other committees. So you're on the housing committee and you exited that committee. And you're also on the economic development task force and the housing inclusionary subcommittees. I also know you own a significant amount of rental property that you manage. So you do have your pulse on that aspect of housing. I'm just wondering if there's something in particular that you maybe held back or didn't find in those committees that you think would be important in this committee, because it's not necessarily duplication of services, but just kind of curious if there's something in particular that you feel you're ready to bring forward now that maybe wasn't able to be brought forward in the past.
I don't want to say directly that those committees were failures, but I will say that we didn't finish what we were sort of set out to do, I guess. The housing committee, I was requested to step down from by the vice president of the council. As we just sort of started to get things going, it was, it created a political uproar or something. So I was asked to please resign. So I did resign from there and stepped aside. So unfortunately, we did not get very far with things. There was sort of maybe even one meeting where we piped up and had some ideas of things maybe we should bat around, but I don't feel like it did anything. And that's something I would think that this subcommittee should tackle as one of their tasks, is potentially making a recommendation to reform the housing committee with a clear and new charge and look at that. But I know there's also a subcommittee here going on looking at committees, so maybe they charged that. But I will say, I think that the housing committee is a very important piece that has not been very active or very successful. So I wish we could have been more successful when I was part of it. The Economic Development Task Force, sort of similar thing. We broke off into a subcommittee to talk about updating the inclusionary housing ordinance, which I think is still something, again, that I hope this committee will task. And we were shut down, and so it sort of never went anywhere. So I guess it's sort of picking up where we left off in a way, is what I see this subcommittee as, if that answers the question.
Thank you. Yep, thanks.
Councilor Burdick.
It's me, the end, right where I like to be. Well, I think I hear pretty much everything I wanted to hear, Jake. I'm just curious, for my own entertainment, how many rental properties are you responsible for in the town of Barnstable?
In Barnstable, probably about 80 year-round rentals.
And then other towns,
It's about 100 total. Everything else is in Yarmouth.
right, in Yarmouth? And I'm not trying to pin you down, I'm just curious. And what percentage of them would you say are affordable or not market rate?
In terms of, if you're asking deed restricted, only a handful. If you're talking about rent levels, probably 90+%. If the rent level would be below 100% AMI, and probably 75% would fall under 80% AMI, but not deed restricted. So those units are not being filled by a lottery system or something of that nature, but the rent they are paying is below that.
Well, there you go. I was curious. Good on you. There we are. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Hey, Jake, thanks. Get to your meeting.
Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
All right, have a good one.
Good luck with the rest. You guys have a long task ahead of you over the next week.
Yeah.
Yeah. James Garland.
Just so you know, they are together.
Oh.
We're at the back.
Oh,
Deal.
Hey, Mr. Garland, Jeff Mendes. Nice to meet you. And Mrs. Garland?
McGowan.
McGowan. Oh, okay. So you're interviewing together?
Sure, why not?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm gonna put it next, I'll do it, Council Bloom.
Thank you very much.
This is the Don McGowan. Okay, I'm sure you've heard my boilerplate question about compromise. So could you please both give me an example of compromise in your professional life?
29 years in the military, I think I've made numerous compromises throughout my career and
Enlisted or officer?
enlisted.
Oh, yes, so
That's
definitely had to compromise, okay. That's an A+.
And for me, it was my experience as a library trustee when I was involved in the building of the new library in Barnstable. Alongside the architect, almost at the beginning of the project, had to go with another architectural firm. And as a group of trustees, we all had opinions and which we were entitled to, and we all had views as to what we wanted the library to look like to meet the needs of the community at various levels. And I believe wholeheartedly in compromise. I think it's so important And living in the world today, you do need to compromise. You have to respect the opinions of others. I've always tried to do without neglecting my own. And I think that's important to listen to what someone has to say. I was very impressed with all the comments I've heard tonight, and we're involved with students. And I think everyone brings something to the table, and you have to be willing to listen to them. As I say, you don't have to give up your views and opinions, but just listen to them sometimes. It's not enough already.
I agree. Council Clark.
Thank you very much. And thank you both for your interest in investing the time and talent into our town. Could you let me know what was it that prompted you to apply for this committee? Or for these committees, for the both looking for applicants?
I think it's the housing issue here on the Cape. But what my wife and I are most concerned about is that just what affordable housing is in dollars and cents hasn't been articulated, and it's not articulated well.
Yes, I share James's comments. I guess we're both concerned because you hear the term affordable housing used so often, but what is it really? You know, you hear 40B, Chapter 8, and this, that, and anything. But for me, I'd like to know, what is the expectation for affordable housing? And what does it mean? We're hoping that the committee will get the data, have a evaluation and discussion to make recommendations. Or that's my opinion anyways. If you were not to be chosen for this committee, would you be attending the meetings and contributing to the discussion, or would you be able to make?
Absolutely.
We listen to all the town council meetings. Oh, you do?
I haven't missed one in years.
And just recently, we both watched several times the last water workshop.
You know, the Affordable Trust.
Yeah. Oh, yes, with the town manager and all the various participants. Very, very interesting. And there are so many aspects to this situation, and it's a very complex situation. I think a lot of layers that have to be addressed, and trying to keep everyone happy, and it's not always easy. Yes, and I know we have several programs before besides the Affordable Housing Trust, the Housing Assistance Corporation, referred to the Barnstable Housing Authority, and other groups like Homeless Not Hopeless, and Homeless Not Hopeless.
Almost not hopeless, yeah.
And so there are groups that are working on addressing the concerns, and maybe not in a concerted way or tactical way I guess, a strategic way to address some problem solving action items. So that's what I'm hoping that this committee would be able to generate. I'm not thank you very much.
Nice to see you both here. You also expressed a desire to get involved with the zoning. Yeah, what are your concerns as you express with housing? It's something to do with zoning. What would you like to say about that?
We're concerned about large projects, footprints.
Are there any particular projects that you've seen lately that you'd like to mention?
Well, we recently visited Hanover. They have 26 affordable units and over 200 people applied. So presently, they have roughly 200 plus properties available. We viewed Everlight. They have another, although they're not affordable, they have another 20 vacancies there. So there are properties that are available on the Cape, but they're simply not affordable.
Maybe there's something.
That they're not affordable.
Oh,
And I know presently that the Housing Trust has $4.6 million available. But I think according to their formula, they're thinking we can build 20 to 24 units with that amount of money.
How much money for 24 units did you say? 5 million?
No, they have 4.6.
4.6.
Yeah, I think their thinking was, if they were doling out 150,000 per unit, they could build 20 to 24 units. And obviously, the property in Marston's Mills, I think, is ideal.
We went to look at it just before coming here. So, the size of the property that you want.
Yeah, the potential there is wonderful. I mean, to construct homes and have play areas for children.
Do you think it's a place that could, in Marston's Mills, could it be made, could the footprint be larger if they went into the woods? I'm not sure how much property they actually own.
45 acres, I believe.
45
I
acres,
believe.
that's pretty tough.
It's actually
12.
I was just saying, it was
Do you mind if I jump in?
No, no.
It's 13 acres plus an additional,
Come to the microphone, please.
there's 13 acres plus an acre that is wood.
Okay,
I live in the Mills, I'm on this committee.
yeah, okay.
I happen to know.
So 13 acres plus an acre, that's really.
There's an extra piece that you don't see when you look at the.
And it's all open from the back and the front. That's my
Right,
neighborhood.
there's egress on both ends, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be a issue of vehicles exiting on the 20.
Yeah.
So,
No, thank you.
Councilor Jefferson.
if you were not selected for either of the committees, is this spurring you on to maybe join some of the other committees in the town? Is this a call to action on a larger scale, or just really this focused interest for this focused period of time?
primarily, I think, for housing and what's going on presently.
We both share a concern about the housing situation. And we want to be fair to everyone involved, the people that need housing, the developers, the taxpayers. We just want to do the right thing by everybody. But I also think we have to think about the future. We're at the end of the road, but there are generations that are coming up, and the one thing they're not making more of is land. And you build, and then suddenly there's no land. So I think you have to try and do what's fair for everybody, and maybe that's unrealistic expectation on my part. But I do think we have to think about the future a little bit.
Sure, thank you.
What I'd like to see is a town meeting where we invite the realtors in, all the folks that are in the room that feel that they're marginalized and are looking for housing. And bring everyone together and say, this is what it's going to cost to construct affordable housing. Because nobody can put dollars and cents on it. I know the trust said that new construction was roughly $623,000 per unit. And what is an affordable one bedroom? What is an affordable two bedroom? I mean, when we toured Hanover and we walked out of there, Margaret and I both said, there is no way that, and we live in Osterville, that we could afford to live there.
The prices start at about 3,000 and go up.
Wow.
A little over 4, almost 5.
This project is designed for professionals that are making $120,000 plus. And people like Margaret, myself, that recently sold a home maybe for $250,000 or $1 million, we want to live there for the next 10 years. But That isn't solving our problem.
Yeah. Do you personally have a problem with housing? Or were you just doing this, research?
No, we just
We were
decided.
just curious.
Curious.
We were being nosy.
Maybe my question was a little bit no.
But same with the 55 plus. We went there and it was the same, you're talking one bedroom for $2,000. In some cases, they went up to almost 4.
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
I'm very concerned with that, and certainly Megan can speak to this because this is a big issue for her housing insecurity and, how does a person who, is an LPN, like Megan, and probably doesn't make a heck of a lot of money, how can they possibly afford even some of the so-called affordable housing? That's,
well, I
it's
think
a
the
very
issue is affordable housing is not affordable. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
Is it right?
Something needs to be done.
60% themselves from
Yeah.
the way they measure it. But, we were just amazed. These are beautiful facilities. But we were just shocked.
Just beyond reach for me.
So we don't have any answers. We do have questions, but
We should have answers. Looks like you did some homework though. Yeah, housing production.
I just don't know where we go from here. And I know a lot of times when we watch the town meetings, it can get contentious. And there are a variety of different personalities that sometimes seem to be doing this. And
Democracy.
yes, but we hope we all get on the same page.
Yeah.
You have to excuse me, I recently had chemo, so my voice is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So
No, your voice sounds fine.
I haven't been drinking. So, but
Thank you.
Councilor Burke?
I think I've heard what I need to hear. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much for coming in.
thank you.
And thank you, Pete, sir.
Yes.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Very much. Perfect tone there. I'm giving you the airway.
Adam Merrick. Oh, yeah. Hi, how are you? Good, Jeff. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Hi,
Jeff. Sorry, Jeff. I just called you Jeff.
It's all right. Everybody's close.
You
look alike.
Yep, just like him.
All right, Adam. Thank you for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. So my question will compromise, obviously.
Sure, so I know I'll go with the professional. I have 2 young daughters who like to negotiate everything from how many strawberries they get with breakfast to bedtime. So I'm really good on compliments. But I'll give you an example. So when I worked at BP, I wanted to start a business in Brazil. And Brazil was viewed as a very risky jurisdiction. So I was getting legal, compliance, regulatory, finance, everybody on the same page to say, not no, but yes with conditions. And so that was a lot of compromise. And then once you actually had it up and going, it was how do you keep it going? How do you make sure everybody feels like there's adequate oversight?
Councilor Clark.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your interest in this, in the regulatory committee. What do you expect to bring to it?
Yeah, so I'm different than a lot of the other candidates because I did not grow up here. I grew up in Central Mass, in a town that had more cows than people, and with some of the most restrictive zoning in the state, where that's why there were more cows than people. I mean, even a pizza parlor was not allowed. And then I lived a brief time in Houston, where there is no zoning. And so, you'd have a nail salon next to, a cigar shop next to a school. And then you'd have houses kind of strewn everywhere. So I've seen kind of the 2 extremes, but I don't have a deep background in it. What I do have is when I worked, in the markets, the job of the market every day, you sit down and say, what does the market need to do? What's supply and demand? How do you balance in the short term? And what are the longer macro trends? What do you need to be aware of to make sure you don't overcorrect? So I think having that data-driven kind of, markets-based approach to understand what are the drivers, what are the incentives, what are the needs, and when do we have to meet them. It's a little bit different, but also I don't have, you know, a lot of views coming in, right? I'm not a local landlord. I own a home here, but we chose to be here to put down roots, you know, for the kids. So, you know, I'm invested long term. I'm looking for a way to give back.
I was gonna say, what drove you to apply for this committee?
A couple of things. So one is I have time. So I've been very fortunate. I was able to retire about 1.5 years ago. And I do have a startup, but it's kind of a part-time startup, and it's more of a passion project, very different than what I used to do. So I have time, I have interest, and I'm a quick study. You know, so, you know, the startup is actually in kind of metallurgy and sculpture, and so I have no background in that, and, you know, I've got some of my prototype pieces in today from the foundry, so to go from nothing to that in a year, kind of shows adaptability and ability to learn quickly. But it's that, I think it's the ability to assimilate data. I'm also a Portuguese speaker, so I think that helps in the community, being able to understand what the needs are. My wife is Brazilian, I'm American, but we have a lot of family there. We spend a lot of time there, not only for family, but also I did a lot of time there for business. So we have a lot of contacts in the local community. It's been really striking to me on the housing front, how many people are coming here and saying, okay, I've just arrived, I have nothing, right? Whether it's children's clothing, whether it's a place to live, whether it's medical care, there's a WhatsApp group, basically for people that are arriving right away. And it's remarkable to me. So I look at that and say, okay, you have tremendous wealth. You have people that are coming with absolutely nothing. And you've got a lot of people kind of stuck in the middle saying, you know, how do I make a life here? How do I make it work? And then my friends, a lot of my friends are older just by virtue of kind of the demographics here. And their kids are struggling to find a way to stay here. So, you know, I think I can see a lot of needs. So I looked at it and said, okay, do I have all the answers? No. Do I have an approach that's probably a little bit different? Yes, that served me well in the past, you know, in terms of building businesses and running teams. And so, you know, I am a team-oriented person, and you know, compromise is pretty central to working in a big corporation.
Interesting. If you were not chosen for this committee, would you be able and willing to?
Yeah, I think maybe not every time, but I certainly have interest in learning more. But generally, when I get into something, I want to go deep down the rabbit hole and really become an expert and kind of master it. And so I'm interested, but I think if I'm going to be fully committed, I want to be part of it. Otherwise, I will, you know, I'm going to keep tabs on it, but I'm not going to promise to be there every week.
Yeah. Awesome.
Adam, you obviously very successful if you're retiring so early. You only look like you're 30.
No older than that.
So, what can you tell me about your business bringing electric generation to market?
Sure.
Interesting.
Yeah, so the electricity market's been deregulated in the US since the late 1990s. And so you've had transmission and distribution, which is largely regulated, meaning it's a monopoly, considered a public good. But generation was divested. So you still have some states in the US that are fully regulated, meaning you have one choice. There's no third party owned generation. And then in a lot of the states, you have either partial or full deregulation, meaning you have third party investors. Oftentimes the subsidiary of the same utility that owns the wires will own generation, and there's a free market. So for example, in New England, you got ISO New England, who's a nonprofit tasked with reliability. So there may be hundreds of different people that own generation on the grid, and their job is to match supply and demand every day and put out a price signal. And so when you're bringing a project to market, you know, you don't have the certainty of, let's say, a 20-year lease on a, you know, let's say if somebody's buying a new ship and they say, I want to finance it. They know their monthly payment every month in terms of what it's going to cost them, but they don't know what the freight market is going to give them in terms of a return. One of the things that I would do is I would come in with my company with, you know, a solid credit rating and say, I'm going to give you revenue certainty for the next 10 or 15 years, which will allow you to secure a construction loan. I would then take that risk, and I would work with municipalities. I'd work with corporates, especially on the renewable side, you know, people who are building data centers or municipalities that had a green mandate, and say, you know, you don't need the output of a 500 megawatt facility. You only need 25 megawatts. I can kind of be the Costco and buy 500, and I can sell you 25, you 25, you 25. Power is also quite a tricky market in that there's a topography, if you will, in terms of pricing. So if you're in an area that has very little generation, chances are your prices are much higher. If you're in an area that has a lot of generation, prices are lower. And so there's also taking on that risk, not just the actual price risk, but also the difference in geographic locations. It's a lot of data number crunching. You know, kind of AI and big data before that was really trendy and cool.
Because you were schooled at Dartmouth.
Yeah, but I had a background in French literature, so, you know, it wasn't really, I mean, I did study economics and then sociology and econometrics as well, but, you know, no, I've always been a bit of a renaissance idiot.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Sure.
Councilor Turkelson.
So I'm gonna make an assumption, and you can tell me if it's correct, that reviewing zoning and regulatory agreements, although it's not your wheelhouse, you have lots of experience probably with the concept of agreements and reading, you know, different areas of your business in order to get all of those people in the right places. And that's part of, I think, what happens when you're looking at zoning, lots of different things going on in certain areas. And so if you could just speak to that.
Yeah, that's actually part of why I thought was my background was particularly applicable. So when you're bringing a project to market, let's say in Brazil, you've got the local state, you may have a local city regulation, you've got 3 or 4 different federal governing bodies who follow their rules. And then because you're also a US, or in my case, it was a dual entity, you have to be aware of US tax consequences and how all of that works. So it's a lot of understanding the nitty gritty, and there's no ability to go back after the fact and say, I didn't get it right. You know, because a lot of times the authorities are looking for a way to penalize you and saying, okay, you know, I've got a gotcha here. So it's a lot of digesting, understanding, querying, saying, I don't understand this, or let's bring in a third-party expert. So I know I've had a lot of experience navigating regulatory stuff, not just abroad. I gave that as an example, but most of the business was in the US and Canada.
Thank you.
Last but not least.
Yeah, how nice. So my first question is, are those napkin rings?
Those are napkin rings in bronze.
Can I look at them?
Sure, they're not finished. These were my testers for a new, have you ever used a Sonicare toothbrush?
I'm familiar with it.
Yes, this is, these are right out of the foundry and basically using a vibratory finish to get the schmoo off. That's a technical term.
Was it a original Sonicare or was it like?
No, it's actually a big, it looks like a big, cone filled with sand and, ceramics and
Rock
just some
something.
sticks, you know, to get it all off, and then we'll have to take it to a high polish. And those aren't full size, they were just to test out the finish.
Those are really cool.
Thank you.
Smell like Bronzo. Did you polish them with Bronzo?
No, no polish at all. No, but we'll launch officially in June, so we're waiting on all of our design packs to come through, but we'll be,
And you're gonna be mass marketing? Or you can't produce them in that volume?
not that volume. No, it's more, I mean, each one's a handmade product, so we're kind of going after the, I mean,
Like boutique
yes,
type
exactly,
scenario?
exactly.
And how many different varieties? Those will be those are prototypes of the line? These
We we'll launch with 12 initially, 12
Wow.
different rings in bronze and probably 4 in silver. And then we have 2 steak knives as well, or table knives,
Oh,
plus some other products.
no kidding.
So my business partner is a master bladesmith, which is a
Right, we
weird
got,
designation.
I gotta make the knives, right?
Yeah,
Somebody's gotta make the
but I'm
blades.
not doing the rings, the other stuff.
And is he local to Massachusetts?
He's actually in Eureka, California.
Oh.
So like I'm here, he's there, and you know, it works. So
That's cool.
he's got a full forge out there. It's like, you get a kid in a candy shop going in there, checking out all the cool toys you're probably not supposed to play with.
I can imagine. Well, that was my question, but I realized it didn't have much to do with this, but you guys always covered all the bases. And we have such, professional people here with such nice resumes. There's no need for me to elaborate, but I find that interesting. That's really cool. So there you go. Anyway, thank you, Adam.
Yeah, my pleasure.
That is it.
He wants to sell them in this, so that's that.
Yeah, why not?
Thanks for coming in. Appreciate it.
What's the town from? You said you-
Oh, Oscarville. Oh, and Princeton, Mass. So Mount Wachusett, you ever skied there? I grew up getting chased by ski patrol, off the mountain at night, so.
Thank you.
All right, Megan.
Appreciate it. Kristen, thank you.
Good to see you.
Me too.
I'll see you around, I'm sure.
Yep.
How are you? I'm Jeff. We never met.
Never better.
Yeah.
Sorry.
They're not.
Sounds very nice to meet you.
They're not.
Okay, so you know my question, low comments.
Yes,
So I need something to compromise with that to make me professional, right?
Well, currently we compromise frequently on the LCPC. Right now, I expect that will be happening more frequently as we get into the action phase of the LCPC. I'm in the medical field. We compromise a lot, especially with various levels of staffing, whether that's my fellow nurses, whether that's doctors, whether that's the aides that I work with, everybody there on many different levels, just to get one job done, and that's to take care of the patient.
Councilor Clark.
Thank you. And thank you for stepping up to bring the talent and time to this committee. What is prompting you to, apply for this committee?
Desperation. It's a stinky cologne. I think Councilor Bloom, referred to me earlier. I've been living housing insecure since I was 15. I've been homeless. I've lived on Main Street. I've lived on couches. I've lived in basement apartments, attic apartments, in many different towns on Cape, back before it was, you know, a village versus village kind of thing that seems to be going on right now. It was more of a town to town kind of thing. I've lived from Wareham all the way up to Wellfleet. And right now, I would say that my housing is more secure than it has been, but I still am unable to find a rental that I can afford, and the home we are living in is overcrowded, to say the least. So that's kind of why I've stepped up to every committee that I've been a part, is just that desperation.
Thanks for bringing that to the table for discussion and evaluation. I know that you've come to the town council meetings before. Have you been dealing with or worked with housing assistance, affordable housing, that committee, homeless, not hopeless?
No, and only because by the time those resources were made known to me, I was making too much money to qualify, especially as a single person at the time. This is again more than 10 years ago. Made too much money to qualify for basically any assistance. I've been on food stamps a couple times. When my child was born, he was critically ill. We were denied food stamps when my husband made $17 an hour at a full-time job and I was not working. So it's very difficult to qualify for things when you're a lot of people don't understand the cycle of poverty. And we were given the opportunity to apply for a Social Security disability when our son was born. To maintain that income on Social Security disability, we would never be able to have a savings of more than $2,000 in the bank. So if we had opted for that, which would have at the time been good for us, we would not have been able to move forward without risking a serious loss of income and finding a place to stay. So that cycle really perpetuates itself, and a lot of people don't understand how it does that. So that's why I haven't used those resources, is because one, I didn't qualify, and two, it's risky to do so with where I want to go in it. And I'm not saying that with people who are in it. It's, again, desperation.
Thank you very much for that. If you were not selected for the housing committee, would you still be interested in being engaged?
Yes.
Thank you.
Also,
You're an important demographic in this whole issue. But I would like to ask you how it's been on your son, the housing insecurity.
I'd like to say that we've been keeping most of it from our son. He is 7. He's certainly,
He's cute as a button. His name's Ollie. He is cute as a button.
he is, and I am biased.
As you should be.
He is, I'd like to think he's ignorant at this point.
Because you protected him.
Yes, he's going to school and he's at that age now where he can start to make comparisons. So there's a lengthy history of, I brought this up at one of the town council, or I think maybe an LCPC meeting, where you aren't really secure in your home until you feel safe enough to put posters on the wall. Like that's a real thing. My husband and I have struggled both in school because our parents weren't necessarily able to afford the things that we were comparing our friends' stuff to. So I've been able to keep him pretty ignorant of that, but he's starting to compare. So those are going to be some difficult.
Yes, there are times up ahead
Yeah.
for you, yeah. Yeah. How do you feel can you, I know you've expressed strong feelings about housing and things, which is, fine. But as I said earlier, that's democracy in action. But as you know, I'm concerned about that these committees everybody can get together and work productively. And, I'm sure that you can do that, but I just want to hear from you that you're able to do that.
I have strong opinions and I'm a strong advocate. And I am able to compartmentalize. I had concerns about that when I applied for the LCPC. I'd like to think that I have worked with people that I don't necessarily agree with, but I'm not terribly aware of any point on that committee or the housing committee or human services where there's been a serious butting of heads and an inability to get past
Good.
a boundary, whatever that may have been. Or an obstacle, I guess is a better.
So considering your situation right now, if you could wave a magic wand for people who are in your situation, what would you like to see happen?
I think the things that I would like to see happen aren't possible now after COVID. COVID put huge amount of pressure on housing. And I think at the beginning of it, nobody thought that it would do that. The opposite day, that happened. I would like to see more flexible zoning. I would like to see more opportunities for smaller homes to be built. I would like to see starter homes brought back.
Tiny homes.
I would like to see Appendix Q passed, or it allegedly has been passed. I would like to see it promulgated in the business code. I'd like to see more opportunities for home ownership. I want hope for people that are working, is what I want. The site that we managed to get Ollie into for summer camp, and the only affordable summer camp that I know of in Barnstable, which is the Townland program, the site that we have them in was waitlisted in less than a minute. I'd like to think that if we can get more people to be able to come to that program, then there would be more openings for kids. That's hard on any parent. Any other camp was $400 to $500 a week.
I'm sorry that you have to that you're powerless in a way to give something to your son that you'd like to give him. And, there's a whole bunch of reasons behind it. Certainly isn't your fault.
Nope, we're working our best. Doing our best.
Thank you.
Councilor Turkelson.
Curious if the work that you've done, I know that you were in housing for a period of time and exited that committee and the Human Services Committee. So you have experience in other committees that probably intersect with housing, in many ways. But in particular, how your experience in LCPC may have modified or changed any of your, not your opinions, because that's not what I'm getting at, but just your knowledge level that may, that you would bring to the table now, having been in that committee already, that you think that would benefit this committee because of that experience?
I think it certainly elevated it. My weakest area is probably wastewater and environmental, certainly. There's so much regulation around that, and there's so many different places you can find that regulation, that sometimes it's very confusing as far as navigating what we can do and where and why and why not. I am, for whatever reason, optimistic about a lot of things, because I like to think that we can get overburdened. So I think the LCPC has served to think like, okay, well, this is how we can get around this obstacle, or this is how we can change this obstacle, not necessarily for the worse or eliminating things, but like, what can we do with what we have? So I think that it's elevated in that aspect.
That sounds interesting. I appreciate that. Thanks.
My turn again. I think I heard pretty much what I need to hear. I can relate though with your struggles. I think I lived in 9 different houses before the time I was 18. And lived in all sorts of those same scenarios up until just the last few years where through chance and careful planning, you kind of pull out of it. But I'm glad that people are getting involved that, can know what it's like to be like, where the hell am I gonna live? You know what I mean, here on Cape Cod, so thank you.
All right, Meg, thank you so much for coming in because, believe it or not, your voice is very important because you speak for a large segment of the population that people don't realize are here. They just don't. And we've all known people and have friends who have had to stay with us, have couch served, have to move off Cape, housing insecurity. And it's important that people in your situation are heard. Thank you. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Megan.
Thank you.
Okay, Remus Vietis.
Give Ollie a high five for me.
I absolutely
Wow.
Very good.
Everybody, I'm Remus Vedas. There's a lot of interesting discussions there and a lot of interesting backgrounds of people that are got interviewed. Very interesting.
Okay, so I see you're interested in both committees.
Yes, yeah.
Which one would you prefer?
I think the two of them may be somewhat tied together. So I can understand where the committee for housing is going and perhaps the direction that it should go in. But I don't understand the zoning changes. And the reason I guess I don't understand the zoning changes committee is that what is the vision that the town has and why are they concerned about reassessing recently passed zoning ordinances? And I kind of understand that the need for regulatory agreements to work with developers and so on to move things along and stuff like that. But what are they trying to achieve? I mean, are they trying to do they want to preserve downtown Hyannis as it is? Do they want to change it somehow? What is the vision that people want to see?
That's a very good question.
Because without that vision, I think that committee is just going to flounder.
Well, there are people in town who aren't happy with some of the stuff, especially form-based code, so on and so forth. So they want input from citizens to try to make it better.
Okay.
So is my interpretation of it.
Yep.
I could be wrong. Yeah.
If the material we were given that the purpose, and this was laid out by council leadership, all these committees, that is, these ad hoc committees, the purpose is to work with the town's planning and development staff to review and reassess recently adopted zoning changes, review the town's use of regulatory agreements, and make recommendations to the council. So as our candidates mentioned, the form-based zoning is new. I'm not sure if any of the other towns have it because our director of planning has lectured to other groups about it because I think it is more forward, a forward strategy, a progressive strategy for zoning. And I think now that it's been in place for a while, I think there's just a review and some tweaking was one of the candidates had mentioned.
Okay, so there's a list of concerns that people have voiced, and those are documented, those concerns, so that those concerns can be reviewed by this committee. I would take it.
I'm not so sure there's a list that's written up, but anyways.
Okay.
That's some way.
Councilor Barrett.
I think whether stated or not, the implication is that this committee or these committees will provide what you're referencing. But I think that this is where this will be the incubator for what the direction is. Though
I see, okay, so
Fine.
we get, yeah, so we have to outline the process to get to the vision. Maybe that might be the zoning part.
As near as
Yeah.
at least as near as I can tell, that's my interpretation of it,
Yeah.
whether it's stated or not, this is the intention.
Yeah. Any other sections of the zoning code that need review besides the one just mentioned?
The regulatory agreements is what was mentioned.
Okay, so just those two, okay, great, super, yeah. So one of the things that I'll just give you a personal experience is that, you know, I came to the Cape in the summer when I was a kid, 10, 12 years old. We used to swim in Shubal Pond and hang out there, and it was great. And as I grew up as a teenager, we would come down on weekends and be with friends and so on and so forth. And we wound up building a house in Centerville, and since then we've done the same thing in Osterville, and kind of watched the Cape grow and stuff like that, and so on. And you know, you can see the pressure on the housing marketplace, obviously down here, and the zoning and what, you know, what's going on, what's not going on, you know, what needs to happen there and stuff. One of the things that you know, the recent zoning is the allowance of a 900 square foot unit to be constructed on a house next to a house. There's certain criteria need to be met, and one of the criteria there is that the owner needs to live in one of the units and the other one can be rented. Perhaps a change, and I'm not sure that all towns have that requirement, the owner needs to live there, but perhaps it could be that one of the units needs to be rented to a full-time resident. So that, you know, because one of the problems is the availability of rental housing. The product isn't there. That's why the prices are so high. So that's just one little way of helping out the housing and stuff. And, you know, the two housing things that are addressed there, that's the, you know, year-round people. Now, is it the low income folks that we're targeting? Is it the moderate income folks that we're targeting? Now, when you talk about the nurses at the hospital and the doctors at the hospitals, I consider them probably moderate income, I would think. And you know, we have a rental in a rental house that we rent full time to a nice couple. And when we bought it, we were looking and we inquired at the hospital if any nurses wanted to rent the house there and stuff like that. And the way that they typically solve the affordability problem is that the hospital congregates them in groups of 2 or 3, and they'll basically share a 3-bedroom house or something like that to make it affordable for them. So that's, you know, that's my personal experience locally. My professional career for the last 40 years, I've been involved in multifamily housing with my engineering company. And, you know, we've done projects up and down the East Coast, and we've seen how different projects, you know, work out. For example, Maine, the state of Maine has a very strong program in workforce housing. Like Cape Cod, the Maine coast needs people for 3, 4 months, 5 months, and then those people are gone. They disappear down to Florida or they disappear somewhere else. So that's the state. I'm not sure what the state of Massachusetts has for that, but you know, there are strategies for you know, housing seasonal workers, because I'm sure that there's a tremendous shortage, and what the magnitude is, I don't know what it is, but maybe somebody does know. You know, for the year-round residents, you know, the ability to you know, for people to take that unit and construct it on their residence and add to the number of housing units available. I mean, these units are small, 900 square feet. You know, my parents used to own an apartment complex, 75 units, 820 square feet. And that's what, you know, the bedrooms were on the smaller side. but they work. I mean, that was so that 900 square foot threshold is something that's nice, that it could be, affordable, but perhaps the zoning needs to be loosened up so that investors could, in fact, build units next to these homes and look at the private sector to help push things along there. There were some discussions about 40B here. Boy, where would Massachusetts be without 40B with housing? There would be virtually no units available. Almost every project that we worked on in Massachusetts was 40B. I mean, it's driven by the AMI, the average, median income level, because that's where the affordable units go. I mean, they go to, so 20% under 40B are deemed affordable. Now, whether the question is, what level of affordability is that? That's based on the AMI. That's what these people can afford. And the rest of the units are market rate units. So, and what the game is with 40B housing is to increase the density and thus reduce the cost. And recently, you've probably heard in the news of town of Milton and some other towns, they get terribly upset that their towns have been selected to be on a rail line, although Milton I used to live in Milton, and that's a trolley line. It's a glorified bus line that they're on there, and they're being sued by the state to basically to allow housing. Now, Quincy, on the other hand, and many other cities, like we were involved in a 600 unit project at North Quincy Station. They built an incredible amount of units. They worked with the MBTA, built an 800 car garage, and that apartment complex is I believe right now it's fully rented up, and there is the affordable component. Again, the affordable component is based on the average median income of Quincy, right? So and stuff. So that's the way those things work. And I mean, where do you get housing affordability? I mean, we've done much work for housing authorities. Although a lot of that money is based on federal monies and stuff, and those things are kind of they're not very active. They're just managing the product that they have. You have federal funding available to you, but federal funding takes 2 or 3 years to get approved. Sometimes 4 or 5 years that people develop a project, and then they've got to wait a long time. I believe the state has some level of programs that are there. Then obviously you got the 40B, which has which is the private sector delivering so-called affordable housing. So there's lots of things there, but it boils down to the cost of land and the and the density. Because at the end of the day, the more units you can put on a piece of land, with reason, obviously, the more cost effective you will. So, for example, if the town does own land, and the town wants to contribute to the affordability of housing, well, okay, then they work out an arrangement with the developer. The developer would set limits, I believe, on the rents based on the fact that they get the land for free. And it might help perhaps push some of those units into the sort of the lower end of the moderate income spectrum and to make them available and stuff. So, and just by the way, the rental house that we have in Hyannis, our tenants are leaving, and they've been with us for about 2.5 years. Great people. They work at home. Their son lives there. And I says, well, where are you going? Because I heard that they had found an apartment over in Marston's Mills, or a house to rent. And he says, no, we're going to Tennessee. We're going to Tennessee because we can afford to live in Tennessee. They're both able to work from home. and the cost of living in Tennessee is a lot less. So anyway, some ideas there and stuff, and you know, it's and again, it's something that the town can only do a certain amount of things. And you know, one of the things that it can do is to help with the zoning, and that's really the thing. And again, the zoning has to be looked at in a reasonable manner so that it meets the desires of the neighborhood, obviously, or the neighborhoods. In this case, if you're writing the zoning code, but it also has to meet the affordability index. And that, you know, many times, I mean, there are, and I can tell you how many projects that the developers that we have worked with, it takes them a long time to get there, to get things to be viable financially. And that's the bottom line. And given the fact that interest rates are high now, it's not necessarily that easy anymore. So it's something that's it's a challenge, but and you know, the issue is, does the town want to be open? I mean, do the citizens of the town want to be open to denser housing? Because that's what's going to work, you know. And you know, you can build smaller housing, smaller units, but again, they're going to be a little bit more cost effective. But you know, whether you have a 700 square foot unit or a 1,000 square foot unit, you still have to have, you know, you get one or two bathrooms, you got a kitchen, you get the heating system, you get it all in there, and it's more cost effective, but it isn't. And you know, you go to Europe, and I travel quite a bit to Europe, and you look at the European hotel rooms, and you look at European apartments and European housing. It's a lot smaller than here in America. We've got gargantuan units for, you know, over here. So again, you know, what the town can do is be supportive of this thing, and you know, not all the citizens want to be supportive there. So I think that's you know, my speech about the housing there and stuff, and again, the zoning is it's somewhat related. I mean, that's really the two kind of go together. So.
All right, any questions?
I have a quick one. You're a very talented and educated fellow. If for some reason you were not chosen for this committee, I can tell you're already invested. Would you still be inclined to attend these meetings?
I would, you know, I guess it all depend on how the venue. I presume it would be an open committee meeting and so on and so forth. I'd certainly attend and you know, provide input there and stuff.
Yep, I can tell you ideas to contribute. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you, Remus. Let me give you an example of a problem that I have with zoning, and I'd be interested to see how you would respond to it.
Sure.
You know, we have form-based zoning on 307 Main Street here, and we have something going on at the old Hyannis Inn property.
Yep.
And so we get this all this material about the Hyannis Inn property, and I look at it, and my first reaction is, Remus, this is just totally inappropriate for downtown Hyannis. You know, but zoning laws have allowed these buildings to be created. It's a massive wall. It's so close to the street. It'll block the sun from Main Street. It'll probably have a dearth of parking, and I think that's where our, not to do away with our form-based zoning laws, but there seems to me a problem, and the problem could be resolved if the town gets together with developers ahead of time to come up with a plan that everybody's happy with, so that these developers don't drop these things on us that will tie up our committees for months and months and months. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I would first say that I would assume that they have a local developer that's representing them. I mean, sorry, a local attorney that's representing them.
Yes.
Okay, so you know, if there is some openness and willingness to discuss the project in the early phases and lay out the concerns about that. And see, now I presume what's going in here is what, a 3 or 4 story building?
Right.
Yeah, so it's really a little bit uncharacteristic of Hyannis, right? And yeah, so in that end of Hyannis, if it's the right end, I think it is close to the Melody tent. So they've gone in and yeah.
This one's across the street from the Baptist church.
I'm not sure I know where the Baptist church is.
Right on Main Street in Hyannis.
You okay? All right. But anyway, but it's a 4-story and the zoning does allow it. Is it okay by zoning? I mean, was it the intent to allow 4-story buildings there to be constructed?
All these things are allowed.
Okay, so the question is then, you know, I mean, there's ways of looking at reducing the wall, and you're concerned about the wall. It's, you know, perhaps pushing the building back, stepping the building back, you know, and stuff like that to allow the shadows to come down. Again, I'm not sure which way it's orientated because it's different, you know, when the building is provides a shadow, the sun goes a certain way there and so on and so forth. And all this is looked at with sun studies and stuff. But the you know, the bottom line is that you know, if you, let's say you don't allow more than 3 floors, is that site a viable site for development? That's the question you got to ask yourself. If it's you know, and then, you know, the parking. I mean, you can think about the parking in downtown Hyannis. You know, we go quite a bit to Alberto's and some of the other restaurants there and stuff. You know, there's never a problem parking at Toomey's, right? There's always room there. But down by Alberto's, where they bring in the buses and everything else, it always gets a little crowded down there, right? So, you know, maybe that area needs a parking garage. You know, there's that to allow for you know, increased parking and stuff is you know, but again, the question is, you know, what is the vision for downtown Hyannis? Is it to remain the same? Is it not? And let's face it, I mean, downtown Hyannis is you know, it's starting to come along slowly with restaurants there for year round. It's more people year round in Hyannis, but the fact remains, you know, they've got a lot of those businesses have 3, maybe 4 months to make it, and then they're all done. I mean, in my village in Osterville, I mean, you know, there's probably half the stores, except the lady shoe store, closed down for you know, for 3 months during the winter because there's no business.
Excuse me, Mr.
So-
Beard. Not to cut you short, but Councilor Clark has to leave at 6:35, and I wanted to complete your interview. So is there any other questions?
Yeah. I have a
Councilor
question.
Jefferson?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As it looks like with your resume, you've been in a lot of places and done a lot of things. So we have the federal government on one end and Disney on the other. So what are the differences or similarities in building housing for such different entities based on their financial structures?
Interesting. So I think that constructing or doing work for housing authorities or so let's say for housing authorities, it's a lot different than doing work for, let's say, for market rate. The federal funding, where we have to wait 2 or 3 years, and I I forget the terminology for that kind of funding. It takes 2 or 3 years to get it approved. And a lot of that stuff is basically the affordability comes in because of the low interest loans on that. And so that they typically tend to be fairly affordable, or there's affordable components to it. But the cost of carrying the mortgage is substantially less, and that's why people are interested in doing the work for the feds. So there's similar quality product, but you know, there's constraints. Time is one constraint there and stuff.
Thank you.
I think I've heard everything I need to hear. Well spoken, lots of information. So thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Great.
Thank you
All right.
very much. And
Okay.
in your interview, you pretty much encapsulated the whole issue with, you know, 4 stories, modernization, sun. Half the population wants one thing, the other half wants another thing. So
Exactly.
you
It's called compromise, right? It's compromise. They're very simple. I mean, you're gonna make some people happy and some people will be unhappy.
That's
But
it.
on the next issue, hopefully you can reverse them and they're happy and it all smooths out.
Thank you very much, and thank you for
Okay.
and thank you for the little lesson you gave us tonight.
Thanks.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Mr. Moran, last but not least.
How you doing,
Wait,
Jeff?
Very good. How you doing?
All right.
Nice to see you.
Welcome back from California.
Well, I go back tomorrow for more.
Hi, Barry.
No.
Okay, I'm gonna answer quick. You asked one question, I'm gonna answer it right away.
All right, well, we'll skip mine and we'll go right to yours. There you go.
Okay. Your question, very simple, why be on board? I've been at every town council meeting, I've got everyone here, this is my home. But I think the question for me is that I've got a lot of things that I'd like to contribute to. I loved a lot of the answers here. This was a remarkable collection of people talking. Some were much more laudable than others. And right now, I think Rick could easily be up here next to me and we'd hold the debate and keep you here for an hour. But that's not happening yet. And I hope that answers your question. Do you want to ask another one while you're here?
That if you are not selected, would you be attending the meeting?
That's what I said.
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah,
Got it.
Because I've got other things to work on.
Got it.
But
Thank you
this,
very much.
this is what I'm willing to devote myself to.
Yep.
And I'm retired, very retired.
Yeah, and dedicated.
Okay.
We'll see you at
All right.
the meeting.
Is that
Thank
all?
you.
Hey, so you can go in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Will you share this?
All right.
You can go if you want to.
Thank you.
Who goes next? Do I get to pick? Who I
Yeah,
get?
I go next. Well, Larry, you know, we were talking about the demographic that Megan represents, and you represent the demographic also that experiences housing insecurity. Would you say that you're housing insecure? I mean, you rent, don't
I
you?
have an incredible landlord. He lives at the house next door. He bought the house I'm in, which is built in 19 teens, renovated it. I've got 680 square feet of this. But the best thing about that is that I don't accumulate more junk. Okay, that's the best thing about it. I've gone from having a 5,000 square foot house to a 600 square foot house, no problem. Okay, but I was for the first time in a while, I had a feeling of where Megan was coming from. Because when she's anxious and angry, you don't hear it. So she handled herself well. So I would actually probably talk to her again, not to persuade her, just to say, let's find out where we're going with that.
Yeah.
But
There are certainly a lot of older folks who, on limited income, on Cape, if you try to, sell your house to get a smaller place, is it even possible? Or would they have to move off Cape to get
Well, my days in real estate, I was with Kinlan Grover for 15 years. It was a pinnacle and then a pedestal, and then it was a trash heap. But aside from that, the whole process with respect to the real estate market is just one of the issues that we're facing financially, in my opinion. I think the whole economy is what is strangling us. How do we as individuals have control over the economy?
We just have to control ourselves. That's what we have to do. But that's not always available for people. I don't have children and grandchildren and everybody and pets and everybody else in with me. There's me. So, I mean, you know that. You sat there with me and talked. But, so I don't know the answer to that. My leaning is more towards, the housing issue because to me, they're a blend. They're a necessary blend, as Mr. Beatrice said. The two go together. And along the way, I think whenever these committees reach a certain plateau, they have to come together. And they have to do it in a joint session, and they have to have it on Barnstable High School. Just get people down there to really have the kind of discussion you need. These are very therapeutic discussions. I made a lot of notes, but I'm not going to try to refer to them all. So,
Yeah.
Does that answer?
Yes.
Anything else?
Yes. With regard to zoning, what are some of the zoning issues that you think that the town has?
Well, until about 6 months ago, I didn't know what form-based zoning was, and I still don't know what it is. I think the zoning issues here have been designed, and I think Kristen asked this question, where the zoning in some instances designed to fit a particular project or a particular goal. That's the tail wagging the dog in my view. I think that the concept of zoning has not been systematically planned with a plan. We don't know what went on, as we brought that up, but that's my view of it. Now, where that goes, this is why I don't know that zoning would be right for me. If that's where I was assigned, I'd plunge into it 300%. But I think that what we're talking about is that it's a very complex concept legally. And housing is not so much complex legally, it's complex emotionally. And I think that there's a big difference. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilor Turkelson.
Interesting, Larry, because I know you have a legal background. So if we take you away from the legal end of zoning and we put you into the emotional end of housing, what do you see, drawing on your strengths from your career? Also, you were in real estate and you also were on the conservation committee. So you have a lot of historical knowledge in a lot of areas. How do you feel like you would bring those things to housing in particular that would benefit that committee over zoning?
I think it would be easier for me to interpret and there's multiple rules, regulations, whatever you want to call them, dealing with housing. They're just sort of scattered out there. It's like spreading your vegetables all over the table, and they're intended to be together. So, but legally, my law career is way in the rearview mirror. I've really not had clients for quite a few years, and I don't want them anymore. It doesn't mean I don't help them. I'll always be a lawyer, but I'll always tell them what. If they ask a question, how many times does a doctor, you say a doctor, I've got an ache in my shoulder, and it turns out they're an item. It's not that. But I think that what we're talking about is that I think what I can bring to the table is the ability to listen more than talk. I've also, and I'm not trying to compete with anybody here tonight. I've also learned I've represented many people who were very, very indigent. I was a public defender in Colorado for 6 years. I went to the jail every day to have lunch with my clients. I was a bankruptcy trustee for years, 22 years doing it. I know what it's all about. I had one man die in the chair while he was being questioned by the attorney against him. So I know that side of it. So there's a level of empathy with me, but not being pathetic. I'm not treating them as being low level or anything like that. There is a difference, by the way, between market rate, affordable rate, and low level housing. That hasn't been distinguished or stressed nearly enough. And what I'm confident that Rick would know is that there are different criteria that fit into how rates are arrived at. And I can see a lot of things being done constructively in zoning. Mr. Beat has just revealed some of those. I feel that I would be much more useful in housing, not just because I was a realtor. I worked the entire Cape when I was a realtor, but I think that I have an idea as to how the market was and how it is and how it may be. But we're not talking about residential real estate here. We're talking about housing real estate, which is bigger buildings or converting some of these smaller homes into rental units. Those are great things, but boy, it's not an easy way to get there. And for instance, one of the ideas I've advocated all along is to give an incentive to property owners. If you do this for your property to make it affordable, we're gonna give you a tax break. We're gonna give you nothing that you ever have to pay back. If you do this, we're gonna reduce your taxes. That's like giving beat stickers to all of us that volunteer. You know, why can't we get a beat sticker? But, so those are some of the things that I think could be done. I think in the housing end of it, it may be much more flexible than zoning. That's what I think.
Well, and I would say that the residential real estate market probably does impact year-round rentals and those kinds of things, because if you're investing in a property at the rates that our houses are selling at, that may impact, you know, our housing stock as well. So I think you would have some knowledge of that.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And I think that the idea, the way I look at these two committees is, and I said this at the public comment situation about when there's adversarial views on it. To me, I think these are exactly the kind of mechanisms you should use. And I think you said that. Exactly the kind of mechanism you should use to get people talking to each other. It's not perfect, but it's a way of getting through it, communicating, and in the process, some of these town council meetings could be 3 hours of public comment, because the public is with this board, with this council. More people, you can tell me, Jeff, you were there, but I see many more people coming and saying many more things with much more conviction and confidence. That's a real plus for what you're on the verge of accomplishing. That's how I see it.
Thank you.
Is it me? Did you already ask your question, Jeff? Did I? No.
We've known each other for
I
7
know.
years.
Longer
Say something.
than that, probably.
Oh, yeah, probably so, yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
I don't feel that I know you well. I should have recused myself. Maybe I can do that.
No.
No, I
Not to know everybody on Cape Cod.
It's very small peninsula.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just quit. Yeah.
Where's your red Cadillac?
I sold that thing years ago to a young boy who still drives it around in Marston's Mills. Ricky Brand is driving it. But I wish I still had that. It was becoming a money pit. Anyway, that's well and truly beside the point. I don't really have any questions for you about this. I mean, I guess I could ask that after all of your years of volunteerism for the town and the ups and downs and the headaches and so on of you know what this entails, you still feel like continuing?
Without taking an overdose of aspirin, I know how to shake headaches. And I know who gives me the headaches. And I don't forget them. The process of doing that, this whole experience for the last, well, since July of last year, has given me a whole new birth of life. I'm much more energetic and much more positive.
Well, that's great.
Confident than I ever was before. I'm always respectful, but that doesn't mean I'm not afraid to disagree with somebody. And getting to your question on, don't tell me, what's the word?
Compromise.
No, compromise consensus.
Yeah.
I invite controversy. I don't invite it as a battle, because that's the way you talk. That's the way you have dialogue. If you bring out another person's view, and you discuss it, you're not necessarily going to solve it, but you vet it, you get it out there, and all of a sudden things come together. That to me is what compromise and discussion is all about. And it's really pretty simple. It's not simple in terms of people being able to do it, but it is in terms of getting people to say, this is what you said as opinion. In your case, I have a different point of view. And I did this in conservation, and interestingly enough, they were in the final, this is two little quick stories. The last day of my conservation time, there was a very good consultant out of Osterville, maybe the Mills, I don't remember, but he was promoting a job at Katuah to rebuild buildings. And they wanted to put a new building, but it was too close to the 50-foot buffer by 3 feet. And the commission was raising a hell fit out of it. And I clicked on Zoom, everything's about Zoom there. I clicked on the Zoom and I said, name is Sean. I said, Sean, why don't you pull the building back 7 feet? He said, okay. So he pulled it back 7 feet, issue over. And he, right on the air, he said, we finally have a pragmatic member of the town. I didn't even know what pragmatic meant. But the other thing is that many issues that I disagreed with, I was vehement enough about it to write an opinion against it. And I turned it into DEP. And I turned it into the attorney representing the applicant. It's all on appeal in the Superior Court, and those are all gonna be overturned. Okay. So, was I wrong in having a difference of opinion? What do you think, Jim?
The way that I look at it, it's just because you may think differently, doesn't make your opinion wrong, just means you think differently.
Exactly. And I
And,
think,
and the fact of the matter is 90% of us think the same, but for maybe 10% of our thoughts.
yep, that's true.
That's just the fact. of the
It's
matter.
very different, and I think the thing that I could contribute, Kristen, would be asking questions, bringing ideas, letting people get it out there, and then not being the solver of it. They're saying, I brought it out now, how are you gonna come together? It's like having a lot of ingredients go into a recipe, and you're building a cake, but out comes the pie. Now, how do you do it?
So now you both.
Yeah, you go. Tell me what your favorite is, I bake and cook all
Yeah.
the time. So I hope that I've answered your questions.
Absolutely. Any more questions, anybody?
Not for me.
Okay, can I go eat dinner now?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I can
motion
go
to
use the
adjourn?
restroom.
Wait,
I may,
Yeah, so-
I may refuse to adjourn though.
Oh, yeah. You have to make a motion.
a motion to
Can
adjourn.
I ask this a very simple question?
Sure.
How many people are you talking to tomorrow?
None tomorrow. Next week we
Oh,
have
Thursday.
another 20
20, so in 2 days?
in 2 days.
Okay. So
April
this week-
30th and May 1st.
What, this week is only 1 day?
No,
No,
we had yesterday.
and today.
too.
Oh, I was thinking it was Wednesday, Thursday this week.
No.
No, we have a council meeting tomorrow.
Oh, that's right. Well,
CIP orders are on tomorrow, so it's gonna be a long one.
Mr. Moran, good seeing you.
What were you gonna say, Rick?
I'm
It's a
Larry.
what?
I was gonna say,
Oh,
I find it.
My father taught me breakfast.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Larry, as always.
So you'll be coming to our other 2 meetings to sit in?
Well, see, tomorrow I had conflict, but.
Well, no,
it's-
no,
it's tomorrow anyway. But, it's very interesting to hear all of this. Some of it is frustrating for the other part that occurred to me. I'm not trying to sell myself here, deal with me. If I don't make it, I'll have more fun. It's that who you pick for the committee is partly would help me decide how much I want to be on it. Well, you know what I mean? I don't want to be on it with a bunch of people you can't get anywhere with. because
Well,
what's the
I'm
point?
assuming if we offer somebody a position and they don't want it, then we would have to go back and vote on somebody else.
Well, I'm not saying I
Well,
wouldn't
no, I'm
take it,
just
but
saying,
I'm
like, if
making the point that
somebody could change their mind.
the
before
committee is
we-
probably just as important to me as it is to you, you know?
Yeah,
you
no,
know.
I'm just curious. I'm more asking
Yeah,
a
we
question.
vote again, right?
Yeah,
we
just then
appoint
go
someone.
back to the,
Yeah, well, we'll discuss after the interviews or in our next meeting, we'll discuss the way that we're going to go about doing things, alternates. So on. and so forth.
I moved to adjourn this meeting.
I second.
Oh, did we already do this? Did I miss
No,
that
but
part?
I moved to adjourn.
Oh, you did? Well, I'll second.
Okay, you don't stop, don't stop fighting.
One more question.
I second.
Who are the
All
town
those in
council
favor?
members who's gonna be on this?
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. Okay.
Aye.
I,
Rick will have us here all night.
Yeah. No, I won't.